The Journey of the Mechas. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76 Lessons. Haha, okay, I'll help you. Jijin didn't try to persuade him, but laughed when he heard Yang Mu say that. It seemed that he wanted to teach the other party a lesson, but he was prepared to endure it in order to save energy. However, since Yang Mu had said so, Jijin no longer bothered about it. Since he was going to fight, he would fight happily. Yang Mu shook his head and said, "Brother Jijin, don't do it. Save some energy for later use. I can beat these people by myself." Yang Mu's words rang out in the venue, and seemed to be very arrogant, but his firm tone made everyone present feel that this was possible. Lu Hao secretly swallowed his saliva, but he didn't dare to control the mecha to move forward, and at the same time he was weighing the pros and cons in front of him. The other mechas next to him also took a few steps back, and they seemed to be a little hesitant. But Liu Feng, who was knocked to the ground, didn't care about that. Yang Mu's fight just now completely aroused his anger, making him feel that he was severely humiliated, so he now had only one idea, that is, to beat Yang Mu severely to relieve his hatred. Thinking of this, Liu Feng stood up while manipulating the mecha. The burner took an attacking stance in front of Yang Mu, and then Liu Feng roared and rushed towards Yang Mu's giant ape mecha. Several mechas nearby saw the captain of their team make such a move, but no one followed forward. They stopped and prepared to stand by and watch the fight between the burner mecha and the giant ape mecha. Yang Mu had of course noticed Liu Feng's situation. Seeing the opponent rushing towards him, Yang Mu's mouth swept a trace of disdain, past Jijin's mecha, and faced the opponent directly, also taking a stance. Liu Feng's mecha came in front of Yang Mu, and he manipulated the mecha to swing his fist. Yang Mu dodged it lightly, and then he swung his fist. The upper limbs of the giant ape mecha were originally made very rough. For a comprehensive performance burner, such an attack is much more powerful than his fist attack. Liu Feng wanted to dodge, but it was obvious that his mecha driving skills were not as good as Yang Mu's. In such a terrain, Liu Feng's performance was limited. In the end, Yang Mu's fist did not dodge, and his fist hit the mecha head of the burner. Suddenly, sparks came out of the neck of the burner. It seemed that it had suffered a heavy blow. The light on the mecha head also flashed. Yang Mu's attack did not stop. Another fist quickly followed, and then hit the chest of the burner again. Liu Feng suddenly didn't know how to deal with it, and could only control the mecha to retreat. At this time, Yang Mu's mecha jumped up again, and the giant ape mecha raised its huge right fist, and then hit the head of the burner directly. The whole head was twisted 180 degrees by Yang Mu's huge force, and the whole mecha fell to the ground under such impact. Yang Mu still did not stop, and walked straight forward with the mecha, holding the opponent's mecha's right hand with both hands, stepping on the opponent's struggling mecha with his right foot, and then exerting force hard, and actually pulled the whole arm off. All this happened in a few breaths, only about 10 seconds before and after. Yang Mu's movements were fierce and smooth, causing all the mechas present to tremble violently. Lu Hao never thought that the person in front of him, who he thought was a soft person, was actually such a terrifying person. With such mecha fighting skills, he would definitely not have any ability to fight back. Jijin, who was standing aside, watched Yang Mu's series of actions and nodded secretly. At the same time, he was also very curious about what this person named Yang Mu in the giant ape mecha looked like. He actually had such outstanding mecha posture technology and could do such smooth movements. Such technology can already be regarded as a senior driver, right? Jijin thought secretly in his heart. While Jijin was thinking about all this, Yang Mu made the final move. Yang Mu lifted up the burner driven by Liu Feng again, and then swung his fist suddenly, hitting the opponent's cockpit chest armor flat. It seemed that it would take a while for the opponent to come out again. With Liu Feng's mecha in a state now, there must be no way to pass the entire competition safely again, right? It turned out that he could still change mechas in the mecha open space, but here, he must have to rely on others, right? Yang Mu finally stopped his fist. Yang Mu finally did not kill him. After all, he was taking the entrance examination now. Although the opponent could do this, Yang Mu was rational and understood what level he had reached. So Yang Mu stopped and threw Liu Feng's mecha to the ground. Yang Mu looked at it silently, without saying anything, and then walked to the side of Jijin Skybird. "Let's go," Yang Mu said silently, but Jijin showed a smile on his face. He was more and more interested in Yang Mu beside him, but he didn't say anything. He just walked behind Yang Mu, and the mecha's hands clasped the shoulder joints of Yang Mu's mecha. The engine started and took Yang Mu away from here and flew to the other side of the crater. Looking at Yang Mu and others leaving, Lu Hao hurried forward to check on Liu Feng's situation. The other mechas looked at Liu Feng's situation, but did not move for a while. They just began to survey the situation of the crater and prepared to discuss how to pass through here. It seems that these teammates also understand what their captain did before and who he offended. Jijin landed opposite the crater with Yang Mu's giant ape mecha. "Yang Mu, you are so awesome," Jimo's excited voice sounded in the channel, and Yang Mu just smiled. Yuan Miao and Qin also echoed, but Jijin interrupted their communication and began to arrange the next task. "We are still a little more than 100 kilometers away from the finish line, but we still have to plan it well," Jijin said so, and then drew a location on the plan map. "When the Titan rolls down the slope, Jackdaw and I will take Qin and Yang Mu to here first, and then Jackdaw will go back to bring Titan here, and finally go to the finish line together," Jijin explained the next plan to everyone. "What do you think?" "No problem," everyone said in unison, obviously very satisfied with the plan. "But my energy has been consumed by 15%, so everyone should pay more attention to energy consumption next time to ensure that you can successfully complete the test." Seeing that everyone agreed, Jijin no longer hesitated, collected the steel cables, and then watched the Titan roll down the mountain. Then he and Jimo moved Yang Mu and Qin's mechas, unfolded the flying wings behind his mecha, and flew to the designated location at the bottom of the mountain. Chapter 77 End. In early September, the northern hemisphere of Yanhuang star was still very hot. The sky had brightened very early. The stars that had not yet appeared were now emitting a red glow, dyeing the eastern sky red. In a huge valley in the dense jungle, there stood many retro buildings facing west and east, houses with flying eaves, and mountains and houses intertwined. No one would have thought that this would be the top military academy of PAJR, a newly established high-level institution that countless people wanted to enter. It was already past 7 o'clock, and the academy was quiet. Only at the tall gate of the academy, a dozen people were sitting or standing there, and everyone's eyes were looking in a direction to the east. There, the sun in the distant sky had already revealed a corner, and the red sun was shining in their eyes, but they were not looking at the rising red sun, but staring at the hillside not far from the valley entrance. In the middle of the entrance of the college, a bald old man with a long white beard was sitting on a chair, looking energetic, his eyes fixed on the mountains and forests not far away. He raised his left hand and touched his long beard, and asked slowly, "Brother Shenfu, how many little guys do you think will come here this time?" The bald old man's surname is Zhu Yang, and his real name is Zhu Yanqin. He was once the supreme commander of the PAJR army, a figure who dominated the Star Sea, but now he is the dean of this college. Next to Dean Yu Yang, an old man with silver hair wearing a tang suit did not answer directly, but squinted his eyes and drank tea. This old man was Yan Shenfu, who gave Yang Mu a chance. This time he was able to come here because he was a visiting professor here, and also because he wanted to come and see the situation and see if the boy he admired could bring him some surprises. Putting down the teacup, Yan Shenfu also narrowed his eyes, looked at the situation in the distance, and snorted, "As long as there are more young people in our country, it will be fine. As for the rest, there will be fewer foreign bandits, and my skills will not be passed on to others." Yan Shenfu's words carried a hint of dissatisfaction, but he could only say a few words at this time. Last year, when this academy was first established, it enrolled students from all over the world and taught military-related technologies. But in theory, this is a high-level military academy established by PAJR in its own country, and people from other countries should not be allowed to participate. But sometimes things are so unexpected, because last year PAJR came forward to mediate a conflict in a certain star domain, but PAANOS stood up to negotiate conditions at this time, requiring PAJR to open up some cutting-edge technology, and also including allowing them to send students to Kunlun College for further study. Although the top leaders were shocked that the other party knew about this academy from nowhere, due to the huge interests involved and for the sake of peace, PAJR finally chose to compromise. But unexpectedly, this matter was further exposed, so some other countries also proposed to send students to study. PAJR was in a dilemma for a while, and even thought about canceling the establishment of this college. However, after a discussion among the members, a plan was finally given. That is, each country will set a corresponding number of indicators. And each country will select public students. The college will teach all kinds of knowledge equally, but the condition is that these people need to spend a huge amount of precious resources to buy admission conditions. That's right, it is to buy admission conditions, and it is only to buy the conditions for participating in the preliminary examination. This preliminary examination is the entrance examination that Yang Mu is going through. The members hope to set up this threshold to eliminate a large number of public students who come here, and at the same time, in order to improve the competitiveness and number gap of students in their own country, although all students have to take the exam, the number is more than several times that of the other side, which greatly increases the number of students entering the school. But even so, the entire school only enrolls 80 students each year, including more than 10 recommended places, and the one Yan Shenfu gave to Yang Mu is an extremely precious place. This kind of quota is exempt from the test, but Yan Shenfu did not tell Yang Mu, just to see if he can always perform so well. Although the number of students admitted is small, there are always some talented students who can overcome layers of obstacles and finally become external students of Kunlun College. Yan Shenfu regards his life's work as his first life, and his ability is tightly covered, but under the requirements of the country, he has to share some things. Therefore, every time Yan Shenfu teaches these students about mecha design, he doesn't like those foreigners. Although they are also eager to learn, the feeling of disgust of others learning this technology makes Yan Shenfu very unacceptable. That's why he said such a thing. You need to change your thinking. High tech is for him to learn. Without the corresponding advanced equipment, can they use ordinary machine tools to make it? Dean Yu Yang saw it very clearly and enlightened his old friend again. Shaoking, what's the situation now? Yang Qin turned his head and asked a gentleman with glasses next to him. The tall and thin man called Shaoking waved his arm in front of him, and a blue display screen of half a square meter appeared in front of him. The mecha base has already sent out 463 mechas, of which 122 have passed the crater, and 24 are already within 10 kilometers of here. There is a team with less than 1 kilometer left. Oh, Yang Qin obviously raised his eyebrows, but did not ask about the specific situation. Instead, he turned his head to look at a strong man not far away and asked, Xiao Lai, as the designer of this selection, didn't you observe any different little dolls? Yang Qin said, but no one responded to him. Under a pillar at the entrance of the Gyoda courtyard, a tall and sturdy man was squatting on the ground smoking. He had a very neat crew cut, and smoke was rushing out of his nostrils. There was a red spot on the right side of the man's face, like a burn mark, which made the whole resolute face look very hideous. However, in today's extremely advanced technology, such a small scar can be completely repaired, but the other party did not choose to erase this scar, which must have some special meaning. Long Lai did not speak, but just kept smoking. His eyes were a little dazed, and it seemed that he did not listen to what Yang Qin asked him. Seeing that he did not speak, Yang Qin could only shake his head helplessly. Or gave up the idea of continuing to talk to the other party, just turned his head and looked back to the east. At this time, more than half of the sun had risen from the edge of the sky, and the light illuminated the entire college in the valley. At this time, on the hillside not far away within sight, a mecha slowly appeared. Everyone stood up instantly, and then looked at that place, not blinking. Long Lai, who was squatting at the gate of the courtyard, did not stand up, but the spirit in his eyes returned at this time, and he also looked up at there. After climbing over a small hill, Yang Mu's mecha was the first to see the building not far away, and he was immediately surprised. Yang Mu quickly talked to his teammates behind him, and everyone immediately cheered up and slowly climbed the hillside under the pull of Yang Mu's mecha. After a night of running around, the whole team was exhausted. Half an hour ago, when everyone was crossing a river, Quinn's mecha had no energy and could not even do a basic move. In the end, he accidentally slipped in the river, and the mechas that were pulling everyone fell into the river. In the end, with everyone's joint efforts, they did not deviate from the scheduled route. This accident also caused the energy of the whole team's mecha to be consumed. 5 minutes ago, only Yang Mu's mecha had 5% of its energy left. Yang Mu took on the task of leading everyone to the destination. Just when everyone was worried about the energy consumption, the destination finally appeared. This was like a shot on the arm, injecting energy into everyone. Yang Mu also controlled the mecha, dragging the mechas with steel cables, and slowly walked towards the destination not far away. Chapter 78 Dean's Response. Boom! When Yang Mu stared at the last bit of energy in the mecha and pulled everyone's mecha through the gate of the academy, the giant ape mecha finally couldn't hold on and ran out of power. It fell down on the huge blue stone brick square behind the school gate under the pull of the steel cables on the other mechas. At this time, rescue vehicles immediately appeared next to it. The staff operated various instruments to come to each mecha and re-injected the power into the mecha. The front chest armor of Yang Mu and others' mechas opened one after another, and Yang Mu was finally able to see the situation outside. After taking off the holographic helmet on his head with difficulty, Yang Mu climbed out of the cockpit. The sunlight shone directly into Yang Mu's eyes at this time. Although the morning sunlight was not very dazzling, Yang Mu, who had stayed in the dark cockpit all night, was a little uncomfortable for a while, and reflexively blocked his eyes with his hands. At this time, a huge sense of sleepiness came up, which also made Yang Mu's mind a little dazed. A night of high-intensity off-road, especially driving the mecha all night after walking 8 kilometers, made Yang Mu very tired at this moment. After shaking his head, Yang Mu wiped his face fiercely, and then looked around. At this time, people came out from the mechas next to him one after another, and Yang Mu finally saw what they looked like. First of all, the appearance of Jijin and Jimo, who had just come out of the cockpit, surprised Yang Mu very much, because both of them had yellow skin, black hair and eyes, but their faces were very delicate, with different temperaments. The two had said before that they were foreign students from a small country, but Yang Mu did not expect that the two looked so similar to people from his own country. Watching Jijin jump off the mecha and walk under his mecha, Jijin was also wearing a yellow combat uniform at this time, looking up and looking at Yang Mu with burning eyes. Yang Mu was a little embarrassed by the other party's look, and with the help of the staff, he also got off the mecha and stood in front of Jijin. "Nice to meet you, classmate Yang Mu." Jijin stretched out his slender fingers, smiled and shook hands with Yang Mu. Yang Mu also smiled back, looking at the other person's unusually handsome face. He was quite surprised, and at this time, a delicate little hand stretched out from the side, and at the same time, a crisp voice sounded beside Yang Mu. "Hello, classmate Yang Mu." Yang Mu turned his head and saw a girl with wavy hair, who was half a head shorter than himself, but her face was very similar to Jijin, and her face was very beautiful. It seemed that she was Jijin's sister Jimo. "You guys," Yang Mu said in surprise, pointing at the two people's appearance. "We have similar skin color to you, right?" Jijin guessed Yang Mu's doubts in advance and said immediately. "In the interstellar era, such a situation should not be difficult to see, right?" Yang Mu looked at the two people again, and was relieved. Although the other party could speak such fluent Chinese as a foreigner, Yang Mu still comforted himself. After all, in such an interstellar era, it is not surprising that they can become students selected to study here and have such abilities. "Hello, my name is Yang Mu." Yang Mu reached out and held Jimo's hand, then introduced himself with a smile. Seeing Jimo and Yang Mu holding hands together, Jijin's eyes flashed with an imperceptible alert, but it was fleeting. "Aren't you very powerful? You always oppose me." At this moment, a girl's fierce voice came from the two of them, and at the same time, a boy's embarrassed voice. "Hey, this is the academy, you can't do anything, and isn't there an old saying in your country? A gentleman takes action instead of talking." What a coincidence, I like to be a villain. It was obviously Yuan Mia who was looking for trouble with Quinn after leaving the cabin. Yang Mu and others turned their heads to look over, only to see that at the two ends of the Titan Raider's feed, the black-skinned Quinn was hiding from a short-haired girl next to him with a serious face. It was Yuan Miao from the New Han Star region. Yang Mu and Jijin and Jimo looked at each other, and were about to go over to say hello, when a hearty laugh sounded not far behind Yang Mu. "Haha, Yang boy, not bad. Not bad." Yang Mu stopped moving because he recognized the voice. It was Yan Shenfu's voice. Yang Mu turned his head and saw a group of people at the school gate walking towards him, and the one walking in front was Yan Shenfu. Yang Mu also smiled and looked at Yan Shenfu walking towards him, while Jijin, Jimo and others also gathered and looked at the group of people walking in a mighty manner. "Yang boy, you are worthy of being the candidate recommended by this old man. You are the first to arrive here." "Very good." Yan Shenfu walked in front of Yang Mu, his whole face full of wrinkles, stretched out his hand and patted Yang Mu's shoulder, and praised loudly. But the people around were shocked after hearing Yan Shenfu's words. Yang Qin and others realized that the ordinary young man in front of them was actually the one recommended by Yan Shenfu with his own quota. They didn't expect that he was so amazing and could arrive here first. The people who came with Yang Mu were also very surprised. They obviously understood what this so-called recommendation quota was, and they all looked at Yang Mu in surprise. Yang Mu was immediately uncomfortable with the gazes of everyone in the field, and hurried to explain. Mr. Yan, don't say that. This is our joint effort. Without everyone's concerted efforts, I can't get here. These 5 people are Pajr Yang Mu, Pajr Yuan Miao, Aole Kingdom Ji Jin, Jimo, and Paa Quinn Wilson. Just as Yang Mu was speaking, the bespectacled man standing behind Yan Shenfu, who was called Xiao Qing, looked at the display screen and announced the identities of the 5 people who successfully arrived here. The college leaders and teachers in the field were suddenly a little stunned. Unexpectedly, 3 foreign students from other countries successfully arrived at the finish line at once, while only 2 domestic students came. Hearing this data, Yan Shenfu's expression did not change, but Yan Qin, who was just counseling the other party, flashed his eyes. Then Yan Qin came forward with a big horse and a golden sword, looked at the 5 people present, smiled and expressed his welcome, affirmed everyone's efforts, and then planned a beautiful vision for the future. Then Yan Qin said with a smile, young men have come here for a long journey, and it's hard. Let's have breakfast first. Someone will arrange for everyone to rest later. Xiaoli, take your students to eat, Yan Qin said, and Long Lai also came forward silently, greeted Yang Mu and others, and walked towards the academy on his own. Ji Jin and others heard the bald old man say this, and they were relieved immediately. They nodded and followed Long Lai into the academy. Yang Mu and Yan Shenfu talked for a few more words. Finally, under Yang Qin's urging, Yang Mu said goodbye to Yan Shenfu and also followed him into the school. Yang, what are you doing? I haven't seen this good student for a long time, and I was going to ask him more things. Yan Shenfu looked at Yang Mu leaving with an unsatisfied look, and was a little unhappy that Yang Qin interrupted him. Yang Qin, however, directed the staff to take away the mechas in the square, then turned around, raised his eyebrows and looked at Yan Shenfu, saying, I know, but there will be plenty of time in the future. New students will arrive soon, and we must be ready to welcome them. Yang Qin said this, but there was no good expression on his face. Instead, he kept asking Xiao Qing to check the nationality of the people who would arrive next, and why there were not many students from his own country. After a discussion, he instructed several teachers, and the rescue process and the entire test could be started. Yan Shenfu was a little puzzled by Yan Qin's sudden actions, and was a little confused, but he still didn't say anything, followed him, and returned to the tall school gate. 10 minutes later, another mecha team appeared on the hillside not far from the school gate. Chapter 79. Even if there are tens of thousands of people, I will still go. Although Yang Mu was once a student of the military academy, in the afternoon, Yang Mu received the things the academy gave him. Looking at the sets of winter and summer uniforms, training uniforms, shoulder straps and collar badges, Yang Mu felt goosebumps all over his body, and his hands couldn't help but tremble. It was a few months later that Yang Mu saw the familiar military uniforms again. The feeling of the military uniforms rubbing in his hands made Yang Mu feel a little dazed, until he pinched himself a few times to confirm that all this was real. In the dormitory with a large bunk bed, other people who also received military uniforms couldn't wait to try them on. Everyone's face was excited, and the whole dormitory was suddenly filled with noisy sounds. Yang Mu watched the people around him trying on military uniforms. Some people put on military uniforms randomly and learned to salute from time to time, but they didn't see that he mixed the training uniforms with the daily uniforms. Yang Mu put on a set of summer uniforms. These uniforms were delivered with sizes, and each one was very suitable for the individual's body shape, except for some people whose body shapes were not particularly symmetrical, and the sizes of the clothes delivered were large and small. After putting on the military cap, Yang Mu stood up and saw Ji Jin next to him was also dressed neatly. The other party looked at him, then straightened his chest, raised his right hand, and smiled and saluted him. Yang Mu also immediately straightened his chest, returned a military salute seriously, and stared at the other party. At this time, Ji Jin's eyes seemed to flash with some light, because he actually felt the temperament of the soldiers of his own country at the moment when Yang Mu saluted him. It was natural, as if Yang Mu was originally a soldier. Jijin shook his head, thinking it was just his own illusion, then put down his hands and laughed with the people next to him. Everyone, whether it was a citizen of PAJR or a young man selected by other countries and passed the assessment, was wearing the most standardized military uniforms of PAJR. Looking at themselves in military uniforms, one by one, their hearts surged and they shouted that it was exciting. After dinner, the academy held a small-scale entrance ceremony in the square at the gate. All the freshmen who passed the assessment were dressed neatly and came to the square at the gate of the academy in a mighty procession and sat down neatly. In this academy located in the valley, the night seemed to have arrived very early. The whole valley was shrouded in darkness, but at this moment, the square was brightly lit. On one side of the square, 10 of PAJR's latest 10 mechas were neatly standing on both sides of the rostrum, and all the students sat upright on the chairs under the rostrum, their eyes constantly scanning these PAJR's latest mechas. Looking at this scene, Yang Mu was not too surprised. After all, such an entrance ceremony would be performed once in every military academy, but the mechas used to show off their power to the freshmen might not be this extremely advanced mecha. After a while, an old man strode to the rostrum, stood in the center of the rostrum, looked at the dozens of freshmen below, and raised his hand to touch his beard. The old man was Zhu Yanqin, who was preparing for the entrance ceremony. Looking at the energetic people in the audience, Yanqin narrowed his eyes habitually and spoke in a relaxed tone. Everyone, my name is Zhu Yanqin, and I am the dean of Kunlun College. After a short sentence, someone in the audience exclaimed, and then some conversations came. It turned out to be a Yanqin, the former head of the National Army. I didn't expect that such a respected senior would teach us. PAJR is so willing to give up. It seems that we can really learn a lot from here. Addition, can I say that I am a disciple of Senior Wu Yang in the future? This is great. Yang Mu was also a little surprised. He didn't recognize it yesterday. The old man on the stage was actually the well-known Shifu Yanqin, who was hailed as the guardian of the Republic. Although he retired a few years ago, he didn't expect that he would come here to serve as the dean of Kunlun College. Yang Mu turned his head and looked at Jijin next to him, and they both saw shock in each other's eyes. Yanqin stood on the podium, looking at the students whispering to each other, and coughed slightly, and the field returned to silence. Okay, everyone, let me finish the business first. Yanqin's smile remained, very kind, just like an elder at home telling his younger generation something. First of all, welcome everyone to Kunlun College. After successfully passing the entrance examination, the audience suddenly burst into applause. There are a total of 80 students enrolled this time, 63 of whom are outstanding students from various star regions of our country, and 17 outstanding selected students from various countries. Everyone has experienced severe tests, so here, I sincerely welcome everyone to come. The audience suddenly burst into applause. Seeing that everyone can come to this college, I am very happy, because you are all the youngest generation of this era, shouldering the hope of the future country, and are outstanding talents worthy of attention, Yanqin said slowly, but his eyebrows were slightly raised. However, as the dean of this academy, I still have to set a few rules for everyone, so that everyone knows some specific things. The first one, Yanqin stretched out his right hand and raised his index finger. That is, this academy does not have a specific graduation deadline. What does it mean? That is, as long as you can complete the tasks assigned by the academy, you can graduate at any time, obtain a graduation certificate, and at the same time be awarded the rank of PAJR captain, Yanqin said with a smile. The second rule is here, please absolutely obey the orders of your superiors. If anyone disobeys, Yanqin said in a calm tone, you should know that you have signed a life and death agreement, right? The students in the audience suddenly felt a little confused, but they also heard some different meanings. Yanqin continued to speak on his own. Kunluo College has just been established for a year. Last year, it also enrolled 80 students, but do you know how many are left now? 71. The remaining 9 are now engraved on our monument to heroes, Yanqin said calmly, pointing to a place not far behind the crowd. Yang Mu turned his head and saw a square stone tablet standing there. It seemed that it was the monument to the heroes. A college would lose 9 outstanding talents within a year. It seemed that this place was definitely not a place to be gilded. I don't care what your family background is. Whether you have lived a rich or poor life before, a turbulent or comfortable life, now, here, when you put on this military uniform, then you are a soldier who can put life and death aside, Yankin's voice was sonorous and powerful. But the next moment, the old man sighed again. But you still have a good time, you shouldn't die in battle. I am still waiting to stand here on the day of your graduation, to personally arrange your military uniform and put on your epaulets. Yankin's voice sounded, and the freshmen in the field were all solemn at this moment, and they all understood the meaning of the old man's words. Okay, let's go on. Yankin laughed dryly twice. The next is, the third one. This third one is very simple. You have to remember one sentence, even if there are thousands of people, I will go. The students who are sent out may not be very clear about the meaning of this sentence, so I will explain it here. This sentence comes from the ancient Chinese literature mechas. The original sentence is, if I shrink back after reflecting on myself, I will go forward even if there are thousands of people. What does this mean? It means that people should reflect on themselves. If justice is really in my hands, then even if the other side has thousands of troops, I will go forward bravely. This is a kind of courage and heroism, a kind of spirit. In fact, it is more appropriate to use it to describe a hero, representing a spirit of perseverance. Everyone in the field was listening carefully to Yankin's words. However, I am not asking you to be a chivalrous and heroic hero. I have another meaning for using this sentence as the school motto. Yankin paused, straightened his throat, and looked at the students in the audience with a serious expression. Yang Mu also sat upright and listened carefully to the teachings of the old head of the empire. We are soldiers. What are soldiers? To defend our country and stand up for our country and people. This is what soldiers do, so what should soldiers do? When the people go backwards, we go forward. When the people are in danger, we are their support. Even if the sky falls, we will be the first to carry it. When everyone is heading north, you should go south. What you should do is to go with your back to the sky. What you should do is to stand tall and brave. What you should do is to bring peace and stability to the country with your flesh and blood, Yankin said loudly, his face flushed red. The people in the audience were also excited. They raised their heads, clenched their fists, and looked at Yankin intently. So, please remember this sentence, even if there are thousands of people. I will go. Everyone was excited because of this sentence, with a heart full of lofty sentiments and ambitions, and they were willing to sacrifice their lives and shed their blood for the people. Whether you are friends or enemies in the future, I hope you can remember this sentence. With a heart for justice, I believe you will make the most correct decision at the most critical moment. Yankin's voice fell silent, and the entire venue suddenly fell into silence. After a long time, Yankin spoke to break the silence. That's all I want to say. Next, there are some arrangements for training and so on. Let your teacher explain it to you. Yankin smiled and waved to leave the stage. There was warm applause from the rostrum. Yang Mu looked at the old man's back with a firm gaze and secretly set a goal in his heart. Yankin's words touched Yang Mu greatly. Isn't what he has always hoped for what the old predecessor said? Stand tall and serve the country and the people. For the sake of his own small family, for the sake of everyone's family, and for the continuation of human civilization, even if he suffers various difficulties in the future, he must grit his teeth and persevere. In this life, he asks himself, even if there are thousands of people, I will go. Chapter 80 Super Intensive Training. Get up. Everyone, get up. The door of the dormitory with large bunks was kicked open, and then several harsh scolding voices came from outside the door. The dazzling tactical flashlight suddenly shone into the dormitory, and then turned on the flashing mode, flashing the eyes of everyone in the dormitory. Now the sky outside the window is still dark. It seems that the time is at most 5 o'clock. I didn't expect that such a strict training would start on the first day of school. Yang Mu has been in the army for so many years, and he is always alert when sleeping. He is used to this kind of scene. The moment the door was kicked open, he jumped up, got out of bed and quickly put on the clothes that were laid out. At the same time, Ji Jin next to him also moved quickly, not lagging behind Yang Mu's movements. Although the freshmen in the dormitory were a little sleepy, they also realized what was happening in front of them in an instant, and also quickly put on their clothes. However, some of them may want to show off in front of the instructors. They didn't take off their clothes when they went to bed last night. At this time, they were standing at the door in their summer clothes. But this was obviously a morning training, so the opportunistic guy was kicked hard and hurried back to change into training clothes. At this time, Yang Mu was the first to walk out of the dormitory and ran to the open space outside. In a dormitory building next to it, girls were also running downstairs. A minute later, dozens of people gathered in the open space and stood in formation. It seemed that all the freshmen had arrived. There was silence in the field, with only the sound of insects coming from the surrounding green belt. The white street lights shone on everyone, making everyone a little dazed. At this time, a tall and strong man walked in front of the team, turned his head and looked up at the people present. Everyone also saw who this man was in the next moment. It was the teacher who introduced the course on the stage last night. His name was Long Lai, the chief instructor of freshmen, responsible for physical and tactical training courses. Everyone suddenly felt clear and understood what would happen next. Long Lai scanned the people in front of him with his sharp eyes. His face showed no expression, but this sharp look made everyone dare not look at him. After a moment, Long Lai spoke. 25 laps of the valley cross-country run, start now, a rough and strong voice sounded, and then the other instructors next to him began to give orders, ordering everyone to move their feet and run towards the gate of the academy in the distance. After running a few steps, Yang Mu saw that in the two dormitories next to his dormitory, a team was also assembled, running in the same direction as himself and others. Yang Mu did not speak, but exchanged a glance with Ji Jin. Both of them looked over there, and saw that several people over there also turned their heads to look at Yang Mu's team at this time. Seeing Yang Mu looking at them, and cast an inexplicable smile at Yang Mu and others, which made Yang Mu a little confused. 10 minutes later, Yang Mu knew what the other party's smile was. The valley cross-country run that Long Lai mentioned actually involves running around the ridges surrounding the entire academy. The academy built a path on the surrounding mountains where two people can run side by side. But there are no protective measures around, and if one person slips and falls, he will fall hard. But not only that, when Yang Mu finished a lap, he suddenly felt that he might be a little sad today. The length of a lap is nearly 1 kilometer, and these instructors urged everyone to complete a lap within 10 minutes. If it were on flat ground, this situation would not be a big deal, but this is mountainous terrain, such climbing up and down, jumping and running, and time limits will kill people. It really kills people. Yang Mu had received similar training intensity in the past, and he had also received such training in the martial arts hall during the summer vacation, but usually he could only run a 5-kilometer cross-country run, and the longer one was only a 15-kilometer cross-country run. But now it is a full 25 laps. According to a 10-minute lap, it will take 4 hours to finish, but running for 4 hours at this intensity is not easy for ordinary people. But Yang Mu couldn't raise any doubts. If he asked such a question, he would only get a beating. Then he had to keep running. After a few laps, Yang Mu found something different. Those students who were 1 year older than him were obviously far away from his team. Moreover, they were in very good condition, unlike himself and others who were scattered and needed the instructor to urge them from time to time. After running for more than an hour, the sky was gradually getting brighter. When he was about to finish 10 laps, something went wrong. A girl in front of Yang Mu suddenly stopped and fell backwards. Yang Mu was quick-witted and rushed forward to support her, but found that the girl's face was pale and her lips were purple. Yang Mu quickly laid her flat and put his hand on her neck. He felt that her heartbeat was very fast at this time and her condition was very bad. Yang Mu had no water on him, so he could only lay her flat temporarily. At this time, the instructor who was following the team also noticed this situation. He ran over to pull Yang Mu away and said something to the communicator. Then 2 drones flew over from the valley, and several instructors took out their medical kits and began to give first aid to the girl. "What are you looking at? Keep running." At this time, an instructor next to him said to Yang Mu. Yang Mu looked at the girl, then looked at several instructors, opened his mouth, and turned around to continue to keep up with the troops. Yang Mu was actually very opposed to using such a high-intensity training method right from the start. This kind of training is not a step-by-step exercise for people's physical fitness. Such a situation will only make many people unable to adapt in a short period of time. It is very likely that someone will not be able to hold on and fall down. Sure enough, after 2 laps, a boy and a girl also fell down. The boy was slightly fat. After persisting for 12 laps, the whole person looked like he had just been fished out of the water. His whole face was red and purple, and he was already in a trance. In the end, he was stopped by the instructor and then sent to the academy by the transport drone. The girl knelt directly on the ground, retching violently, and then suddenly fell forward. Fortunately, she was caught by several classmates next to her and did not roll down the ridge. 3 people had already fallen down before the task was halfway through. The others were also dazed and seemed to be in poor condition. Everyone had not taken in any energy since getting up in the morning, but had to undergo such high-intensity training. Everyone had nothing else except for replenishing water. At this moment, everyone was on the verge of collapse. Yang Mu was also panting heavily, and he could only feel his heart pounding and the blood vessels in his forehead beating. Even with a first-level physique, Yang Mu was a little tired. At this time, the instructor's urging voice still came from behind. Chapter 81 Persistence. Several instructors urged everyone to continue running. When Yang Mu was about to grit his teeth and continue to persevere, a boy next to him turned around and said to the instructor not far behind him, "Report, instructor, I have a question." This was a boy with an ordinary figure, but he exuded the hot-blooded temperament of a 17 or 18-year-old boy. Perhaps he wanted to argue after seeing the current situation. But Yang Mu knew it was futile. A sturdy instructor came forward and glanced at the boy fiercely. "What's your question?" the instructor's fierce words sounded. The boy was not afraid. He looked at the other party and said what he wanted to say directly. "Instructor, I think this task is too difficult. I hope the instructor can give us more time, and I think we need to provide us with something that can replenish energy," the boy said righteously, and he also expressed the thoughts of most people here. But will the other party accept it? At this time, the students from the previous class just ran by here. They all obviously heard the boy's words. They all glanced at the boy, and there was a trace of disdain in their eyes. Yang Mu looked at their expressions, feeling somewhat puzzled, but suddenly heard the scream of the boy. Yang Mu quickly turned his head to look over, only to see that the boy was kneeling on one knee, holding his stomach, with veins on his head bulging, and sweat on his face from time to time. He didn't know whether it was caused by running just now, or the huge pain caused by this kick. But it was not over yet. The sturdy instructor bent down, grabbed the boy's collar and lifted him up, staring at him, and said, "Don't negotiate with me here. Here, you have only one way, obey orders." Yang Mu looked at the boy's still uncomfortable face, and felt a little indignant. He was about to go up and persuade him, but was blocked by another instructor. The instructor gave Yang Mu a look that said "Don't mind your own business," and then several instructors next to him came forward again, took out the buttons on their waists one by one, and scolded everyone to continue running again. Yang Mu knew that this method was useless. Looking at the postures of these people and the drones around them that were always keeping a close eye on the entire team. These people have only one goal today, which is to tire everyone out. Yang Mu turned around with some anger in his heart, wiped the sweat from his forehead, lowered his head and continued to run. At this time, a hand patted Yang Mu's shoulder. Yang Mu turned his head and saw that it was Quinn. Quinn raised his glasses on his nose and said to Yang Mu in an encouraging way, "Hold on, just get through it." At this time, Yang Mu happened to see Ji Jin, who was following behind him on the right, and the other party also gave him a cheering look. Yang Mu turned his head and nodded, and he was also determined in his heart, and continued to run. Time passed by minute, the sun was already high in the sky, and the whole team was in a mess at this moment, and the speed of running was almost the same as walking. There were 80 people in the whole class, and more than half of them had fallen down by the 23rd lap, and there were only a dozen boys who could persist in the field. Even among these dozen boys, everyone was in a very depressed state at the moment. The training uniforms on everyone were already covered with thick salt stains. The footprints of everyone left deep marks on the cement steps. These were traces of sweat. Yang Mu didn't know how to describe the current scene. His brain seemed to have stopped thinking. He could only recall the sound of his heavy breathing. His throat was dry and itchy due to the intense breathing, and even a little painful. There was also the sound of his heart beating, as if he would collapse in the next second. Not only that, Yang Mu could also feel that his feet seemed to have blisters. Although the training shoes and socks were high-end products, Yang Mu just felt that his feet were hot and painful at the moment. There were still several instructors scolding voices behind him. These guys wished that the people in front of them would fall down, so that they could go back and rest immediately. Yang Mu, at this moment, a hoarse and weak voice suddenly came from behind Yang Mu, forcing himself to shout Yang Mu's name in the gap between gasps. Yang Mu turned his head and looked behind him, only to see that Quinn's black face was pale at this moment, and his two thick lips were also cracked. He was very listless and seemed to be on the verge of fainting at any time. Quinn's eyes were rolling upwards at this moment, and he was running forward unsteadily, relying entirely on his body's instincts. But in the next second, Quinn suddenly staggered and leaned forward. Yang Mu was close at this time, and he quickly stretched out his right hand to support him. The moment he grabbed Quinn, the weight of the other person's body was instantly transmitted to Yang Mu, who was already close to fainting. He was also pulled by the other person's force and staggered. Seeing that the two were about to fall to the ground together, another hand also grabbed Quinn at this time. Yang Mu looked up and saw that it was Ji Jin who grabbed Quinn's other hand. Ji Jin's condition was not very good either. Sweat was all over his face, and his face was red. It seemed that he was not in good condition. As for Ji Jin's sister Jimo, she had been carried down halfway, and was probably on saline drip at this moment. Ji Jin was panting, and did not communicate with Yang Mu. He just helped Quinn to move forward with Yang Mu. Quinn seemed to have recovered a little at this time, and cast a grateful look at the two of them, trying his best to lift his body and grit his teeth to persevere. The three of them persisted in moving forward in this state. The others behind them seemed to be inspired by Yang Mu and the other two, and they formed small teams one after another, cheering each other on and continued to run. In the last lap, Yang Mu and the other two climbed up the highest point of the entire route with difficulty, and then moved down. At this time, the instructor surprisingly did not scold everyone, but followed them slowly. Yang Mu and the other two gritted their teeth and persisted. The blisters under Yang Mu's feet were probably broken at this moment. Yang Mu could even feel the skin rubbing after the blisters broke. There was a severe pain under his feet. When he went down the next step, Yang Mu's legs suddenly softened, and then he stepped on the air, and his body suddenly shrank down. But the next moment, Yang Mu's hand was tightly grabbed. Yang Mu stood up in a trance, and saw that it was Quinn next to him who was holding him tightly. Yang Mu said that he was fine, and stood up again with Quinn and Ji Jin, and then supported each other and walked down. The finish line was not far away, and there were still 300 or 400 meters. We must hold on. Perhaps it was because we could see the finish line. No one fell down in these few laps. Everyone supported and encouraged each other, and ran for the last goal. Hold on, the last few steps, Yang Mu said with difficulty. The three of them almost pulled each other forward, and walked towards the finish line step by step. Looking at the finish line in front of him, Yang Mu did not hear the instructors who encouraged him and others at the finish line. There was only the vague finish line in his eyes, and only the heavy breathing sound came from his ears, one after another. I don't know how long it took. Yang Mu's eyes were blurred, and he saw that there seemed to be a figure rushing towards him, but the sound in his ears suddenly disappeared, and his eyes were black. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82, Unknown. Xiaoli, how is the situation, Teacher Ma? The ZT nutrient solution has just been changed once, and 2 more strengthening drugs have been injected. Well, pay attention to the concentration of the nutrient solution, and also pay attention to whether they have woken up at any time. In a large white room, 2 people stood in front of a row of glass cylinders in front of them, looking at the floating figures inside, and gesturing and communicating some things on the recording panel. Yang Mu only felt that his whole body seemed to be trapped in a ball of warm cotton at this moment, warm and gently lifted up. He didn't want to move at all, just wanted to lie in it lazily. But slowly, Yang Mu heard the sound coming from outside, the conversation and footsteps of several people, and the ticking sound of some instruments. Yang Mu finally opened his eyes slowly. The scene in front of him was completely blurry. Yang Mu tried to blink his eyes again, and finally he could see the situation in front of him more clearly. He seemed to be lying in a glass tank at this moment, with an oxygen mask on his head, and his whole body was soaked in a warm blue liquid, and various adhesive stickers connected to the wires were attached to his body. Yang Mu unconsciously moved his body and looked outside. A figure seemed to be walking towards him in the blur. A man in a white coat walked to Yang Mu's nutrient tank. He was just going to check the specific data at the nutrient tank, but he happened to meet Yang Mu's open eyes. The other party was stunned for a moment, then immediately turned around and called out to the other staff in the white room in surprise. The person in nutrient tank number 001 has woken up. Come and measure the data. After the words were spoken, Several people in white coats came over with panels for recording information, and then gathered next to Yang Mu's tank. How come it's so fast? Isn't the dosage of the sleeping pill enough to ensure that they can sleep until tomorrow morning? Who knows? Maybe it's due to his physical constitution. What's the data of his nutrient tank? A young man in a white coat walked up and called up the data of Yang Mu's nutrient tank, blinking in disbelief. How could it be? There's only base liquid in his nutrient tank. The ZT nutrient solution and enhancer are gone. How is this possible? Did they just replace it? One of the middle-aged men pushed the young man aside and walked over. He looked at the data on the nutrient tank and was also incredulous. He stood up and turned his head to look at the person who had just spoken to him. That's right, Mr. Ma, I just filled these nutrient tanks with brand new nutrient solution and enhancer an hour ago. This is tank number 001. I definitely didn't neglect it, said the man in the white coat who first communicated with the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man called Mr. Ma waved his hand and said, forget it. It seems that the nutrient solution and enhancer have been absorbed by him. Drain the base liquid and let him out. Xiaoli, call up the data again. The system should have been monitoring it just now, the middle-aged man said to the young man again, and then the others next to him began to record the relevant data. The researcher named Xiaoli ran to the central console not far away and tapped the keyboard. Yang Mu could feel the blue liquid in the nutrient tank where he was lying flowing down the bottom of the tank. In a moment, the tank where Yang Mu was lying was empty, and the various monitoring instruments attached to Yang Mu also loosened, and the glass cover of the nutrient tank also popped open at this time. Yang Mu took off the oxygen mask on his face, sat up slowly, and shook his head. At this time, a researcher next to him came over and handed Yang Mu a set of white clothes. Yang Mu realized that he was not wearing anything. Yang Mu quickly covered his important parts with his eyes and hands, and then pulled the clothes over. Without looking for a place, he quickly put them on next to the nutrient tank. When Yang Mu was getting dressed, he habitually wiped his neck, but found that the subspace necklace on his neck was missing. His face changed immediately, and he looked up and asked the researcher in front of him with a somewhat nervous look. Comrade, where's my necklace? Where are my things? Because the subspace necklace contained Annihilation, Yang Mu did not dare to put it in a fixed place, and always carried it with him. Moreover, this kind of equipment was designed to be waterproof and dustproof, so Yang Mu was not afraid that it would be damaged so easily, and it was also for him to have something to rely on when he was in danger. But now his neck was clean, Yang Mu couldn't help but be anxious. Seeing Yang Mu so excited, the other party pointed to a door next to him, and then said, in the cabinet in the preparation room over there are numbers, just go and get it yourself later. Yang Mu breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly put on his clothes. When he looked up again, he saw a circle of people standing next to him, each wearing a white coat and a white mask on his face. Especially the older man in front of him, holding a display panel in his hand, looked at Yang Mu with a fiery look, as if he had found a treasure, which made Yang Mu a little scared. Young man, the middle-aged man suddenly stepped forward and grabbed Yang Mu's hand, which frightened Yang Mu. Let's go, let's go. Without saying anything, the other party suddenly pulled Yang Mu to a room next to him. Yang Mu felt very puzzled and asked hurriedly, what are you doing? But the other party did not stop, still pulling Yang Mu, saying, physical examination, go for a physical examination. Physical examination? He had just come out of the nutrition tank. These people should know his situation. Why do they need a physical examination? Yang Mu looked puzzled, and his feet had to keep up, but his eyes also swept around the room. This room is very tall and wide. The top of the laboratory is full of pipes. On the wall beside, there are rows of nutrient tanks neatly arranged. At this moment, there are people lying in them. Yang Mu took a glance and found that the people inside were all freshmen who came to school with him. However, the people lying in the nutrient tanks in this room are all boys. Yang Mu was pulled by the man in front of him to another room. When he walked inside, several doctors and nurses were recording some data inside, but they were attracted by the person who pushed open the door and pulled Yang Mu in. They all turned their heads. Give him a physical examination, a comprehensive physical examination. Do it now, the middle-aged man said loudly, seeming to be very anxious. Yang Mu was full of question marks, but the doctors and nurses seemed to realize something. They all put down their other work immediately and began to pack up their tools. A thin man walked straight towards Yang Mu and pulled Yang Mu aside with several nurses. Hey, Hey, who are you? What are you doing? Yang Mu was pulled by these people, and he couldn't help but feel a little panic. Having woken up in such a place, Yang Mu was a little overwhelmed. Then, these people acted as if they were going to use him as a guinea pig for an experiment. Their attitudes were so serious that Yang Mu was sure to be panicked. Yang Mu exerted force on his hands and just twisted his body. He threw these people away, and a nurse fell to the ground. Yang Mu looked gloomy and frowned, looking at them sharply. Who are you? What are you doing? And what did you do to me? Yang Mu's angry and surprised voice came from the Y room. Chapter 83 Explanation. Yang Mu was a little angry because the situation he was facing now made him feel like he was being manipulated. And why was he a little surprised? Because when Yang Mu just broke free from the pull of these people, Yang Mu actually found that his physical strength seemed to have increased. Just by clenching his fists, he could feel full of strength. With past experience, Yang Mu immediately realized what was going on. His physical fitness had improved, and he had now reached the second level of physical fitness. This would have taken a while, but he didn't expect to break through after he woke up. What's going on? Who is making trouble? At this moment, the door of the medical room was pushed open again, and two soldiers in military uniforms walked in with serious expressions. Looking at the obvious white lines on the other side's military uniforms, Yang Mu realized that the two were military police. The two military police also set their eyes on Yang Mu at the same time. Seeing the military people appear, Yang Mu was relieved in his heart. Just as he was about to explain the situation, the middle-aged man who pulled him in spoke first. Excuse me, comrades. This student may have just woken up and is still a little uncomfortable, the middle-aged man said calmly, and pointed at Yang Mu. After seeing the middle-aged man, the two military police immediately saluted solemnly, but spoke in a calm tone. Director Ma, is there anything I can help you with? The two people's arrival was not for no reason, but a nurse in the medical room pressed the emergency button. The middle-aged man, who was called Director Ma by the military police, waved his hand when he heard the military police's words and said politely, "It's okay, we can handle this, please come over." The two military police heard him say this, looked up at Yang Mu again, saluted, and retreated again. Yang Mu looked at the situation in front of him and was a little stunned. At this time, the middle-aged man called Director Ma looked at Yang Mu again and walked over slowly. Taking off the white hat on his head and the mask on his face, the middle-aged man showed a kind face, and took out a document from his jacket pocket and threw it to Yang Mu, saying in a soft tone, "Don't get excited, young man. My name is Ma Wenjin, and I'm the person in charge here. I didn't bring you here to do anything that would harm you. I just wanted to do a physical examination." Yang Mu caught the ID that the other party threw over, opened it cautiously, and found that it was the ID of the person in front of him. Ma Wenjin, a lieutenant colonel. This is part of the training plan of Kunlun College, and the purpose is to strengthen your physical fitness, Ma Wenjin continued. Is this arranged by the college? Yang Mu was a little confused when he heard what the other party said. Yes, it will be once every 2 weeks in the future. Today is the first time, that is, you will come here after completing the training, Ma Wenjin patiently explained to Yang Mu. We are now in the research room in the basement of the college. In principle, we have not left the college. Yang Mu listened to the other party's explanation, and said nothing but handed over the ID. Ma Wenjin saw that Yang Mu gradually calmed down, so he said more things. I just brought you here for a physical examination to check your body's condition again. It's 11 o'clock in the evening now. You've been in the nutrient tank for 12 hours. Our original plan was to inject you with nutrient solution and enhancers twice for your saturated absorption, so as to consolidate your foundation and strengthen your physique. But just an hour ago, after injecting new nutrient solution into your tank, you woke up, and you absorbed all the nutrient solution and enhancers in the nutrient tank, Ma Wenjin said. His expression became serious. The doctors and nurses beside him were also surprised when they heard this. Yang Mu frowned and said, "Isn't this abnormal? You can absorb these things in an hour, right?" Although Yang Mu has never absorbed so quickly in this life, he has completed this type of enhancement in an hour in his previous life, so it shouldn't be a big problem. No, theoretically it is possible according to different people's physiques, but you are different. The system's monitoring data shows that you have completed the absorption of the new nutrient solution and enhancer in just 10 minutes. This is unprecedented. Ma Wenjin's unbelievable voice came, and Yang Mu was also stunned. This nutrient solution and enhancer are already fully mature products, and have been used in many practical operations. In theory, it takes 10 hours for a dose of nutrient solution and enhancer to be completely absorbed. People with special physiques also need more than 2 hours. That's why I think that your absorption of these things so quickly is completely contrary to medical common sense and may have a great impact on your body. I just want to confirm your physical condition again. Ma Wenjin said this with some anxiety and strong interest in his eyes. Although this situation is critical, if Yang Mu is really okay, this will be a major experimental achievement. Under the influence of these two factors, Ma Wenjin was so anxious to bring Yang Mu here. After listening to the other party's words, Yang Mu carefully looked at the other party's documents in his hand. Combined with the attitude of the two military police just now, Yang Mu finally believed the other party's words. Yang Mu was also very surprised by what the other party said, and he also wanted to know what was going on with him. In that case, I was reckless just now, sir. Yang Mu stood up straight, saluted, and said sorry. Ma Wenjin didn't care about this at all, just looked at Yang Mu with hope. Then, let's continue the examination, Ma Wenjin said, and Yang Mu nodded. Everyone in the medical room breathed a sigh of relief, and a nurse immediately guided Yang Mu to sit down next to him. Other doctors and nurses also got busy and began to give Yang Mu a comprehensive examination. At the same time, on the top floor of a loft in Kunlo College, Yang Qin was sitting on an antique chair, constantly sliding the control panel in his hand and browsing the report on it. Xiao Ma is still efficient. This preliminary report is very well done. Yang Qin nodded and affirmed the report in his hand. Opposite him, Yan Xianfu was sitting next to him, fanning himself, and also browsing the things on the display panel in his hand. The quality of students this year is very good. There are more than a dozen students with level 3 physique. Especially these two, they have already reached level 4 physique. Yan Xianfu dragged out 2 files from the panel and displayed them on a huge light screen in the room. On it were pictures and files of Jijin and Jinmo. Yang Qin turned his head and took a look, and said with a somewhat jealous expression. The boy insisted on running the whole course, but this girl fell off halfway. Why? What do you think they are hiding? Physical fitness and endurance are not proportional. It depends on personal conditions. Yan Xianfu glanced at Yang Qin's face, picked up the tea next to him and took a sip. I was thinking, why are these 2 good seedlings not from our country? Yang Qin suddenly put down the display panel in his hand, leaned forward and said to Yan Xianfu. What do you think if I win over these 2 kids? Yang Qin said with a smile, and he actually had other thoughts. It doesn't matter, but I think it's difficult. Yan Xianfu waved his hand. He didn't seem to be very surprised by what Yang Qin said. He just replied calmly. What are you afraid of? The Aole Kingdom has only appeared in the past 10 years. It is a kingdom in a remote star field. How can it be as attractive as our PAJR? Yan Xianfu didn't say anything, but just looked up at Yang Qin. Forget it, let's take it slowly. Seeing Yan Xianfu didn't say anything, how could Yang Qin, as an old friend, not know what the other party was thinking? He lay back in his chair and continued to review the report. Chapter 84, No Results. Yang Mu was sitting on a stool in a corner of the medical room, watching the doctors and nurses walking around in front of him. The researcher named Ma Wenjin was also comparing the various data that had just come out. However, the expression on his face was getting worse and worse. Yang Mu secretly swallowed his saliva. Since they had just finished a series of examinations on him, Yang Mu had been sitting aside, slowly thinking about this matter. He actually absorbed such a high dose of nutrient solution and enhancer in such a short time, and now he didn't feel any discomfort. These things that he absorbed didn't seem to cause any harm to him, but made him feel very energetic, and his strength was improved a lot. At first, Yang Mu was naturally very surprised, and told himself in his heart that this was a good thing, but watching these people busy here, especially Ma Wenjin's increasingly frowning brows, Yang Mu just felt that something was wrong. Yang Mu pondered carefully, and felt more and more that this matter was indeed a bit weird. I also know the absorption process of such a nutrient tank. That is, these nutrient solutions and enhancers are absorbed through the skin, so as to stimulate cell activity and enhance the physical fitness of the whole person from the outside to the inside. However, this method is destined to be a slow process. It is impossible to absorb these things in the blink of an eye. But such a thing really happened to me, and it seems that the reason cannot be found. If this is not a malfunction, But it is true. What is the reason? Yang Mu suddenly thought of the man named Kazu who he saw in his dream. Is all this related to him? Yang Mu's heart paused, and his face looked a little bad. At this time, he heard the sound of footsteps walking towards him. Yang Mu looked up and saw that it was Ma Wenjin. Ma Wenjin was looking at Yang Mu, and his expression was also very puzzled. It seemed that he had not found any results that could satisfy him. Director Ma, how is the situation? What is the result? Yang Mu stood up and asked anxiously, wanting to get the other party's answer. Ma Wenjin shook his head, took the display panel, slid a few times, and said to Yang Mu, no nutrient solution and enhancer residues were found in your blood, saliva and cell samples. They may have been completely absorbed by your body's cells. This situation should be good. Don't worry too much. This was obviously a perfunctory answer. Yang Mu couldn't fail to understand. He didn't want to end it like this. He stepped forward again and looked at the other party anxiously. Director Ma, you should tell me the final result, Yang Mu said. At this time, the door of the medical room was opened, and a man wearing a white coat and a mask walked in. Teacher Ma, the time is up. The students are being evacuated. The researcher saw Ma Wenjin, walked straight over and said, and glanced at Yang Mu. When Ma Wenjin heard the news, he was about to go out, but suddenly realized that Yang Mu was still standing next to him, so he turned around, straightened his face and said to Yang Mu, Student Yang, what I just said is the truth. There is indeed nothing different in your body. The result we got here is that everything is normal. Maybe there is really something wrong, so this problem may need to be solved slowly. Now go back with us. Ma Wenjin said this. Yang Mu sighed, knowing that he would not get any results if he continued to ask. So he nodded and followed Ma Wenjin out of the medical room. When they came to the research room just now, the empty research room was now unusually noisy. The nutrition tanks that were originally neatly arranged on one wall were now all spread out on the empty ground of the whole room. Students were coming out one by one. Some were sitting on the nutrition tanks and still adapting to the state of just waking up, while some were already kneeling on the ground, vomiting heavily, which seemed to have some reaction to the stimulation of the drugs. Several researchers in the research room were holding clothes and shuttling around the whole room, distributing them to everyone who had just woken up from the nutrition tanks, and also taking care of the status of some people in time. Dozens of students woke up at the same time, and several researchers were a little overwhelmed. Student Yang, go back first. Your things are in the preparation room. Your name is on the locker inside. Ma Wenjin pointed to a door not far away and said. After you get your things, gather here and you can go back to the ground. After Ma Wenjin said this, he immediately walked forward and assigned tasks to each researcher. Some people began to count the current data, and some people helped to relieve the negative stimulation caused by the drugs to some students. Yang Mu looked at the other person's busy appearance, turned his head to look at the door, and then walked over. Inside, Yang Mu quickly found the locker with his name on it. When he opened it, his dirty clothes and belongings were all inside. Yang Mu first found his necklace. After confirming that there was no problem, he took his clothes from a bag inside and packed them. At this time, several students who were also wearing pure white clothes also walked into the room and began to look for their own lockers. Ji-jin was also in this team. Seeing Yang Mu walking out with his things, Ji-jin was obviously stunned for a moment, and then quickly greeted Yang Mu. Why didn't I see you just now? I woke up a little early, and then stayed in the medical room next door for a while, Yang Mu said with a smile, making way for Ji-jin. Let's talk later, I'll wait for you outside, Yang Mu said to him, and then walked out. Yang Mu didn't intend to tell the other party about his own affairs, there was no need. A quarter of an hour later, Yang Mu and others had already stood in front of a white door in the laboratory. Several instructors had come to the laboratory and were ready to take Yang Mu and others out. The students in the team were communicating with each other, and they were very surprised that they woke up in the nutrient tank. Some people discussed how much the substances in these nutrient tanks cost, and some people were saying that PAJR Top Academy was rich and powerful, and such things would happen every half a month in the future. They may have never seen such a situation before, but now it is going to become the norm, and it is inevitable that they will be a little excited and amazed. Yang Mu stood there, lowering his head and not saying anything. He had just talked with Ji-jin for a few words and learned that the other party was actually a level 4 physique. Such a nutrient tank was no longer of any help to him. At most, it could help repair the most basic wounds. Yang Mu was secretly shocked after hearing what the other party said. Ji Jin was able to reach a level 4 physique at the same age as himself. This required a huge amount of money and luck. Compared with Yu Wenqiu, such strength was simply a bit terrifying. After a while, an instructor and Ma Wenjin completed the handover work. Then, under his command, more than 60 boys all stood up, the white door slowly opened, and then walked out in an orderly manner. Watching these students in white clothes walk out of the gate, Ma Wenjin stood next to the console, his eyes fixed on one of the figures. "Teacher, do you want to sort out these data again? Or should we directly put them into the database?" The researcher named Li came forward and took the data just exported from the system to Ma Wenjin. Ma Wenjin looked down at those things. "Just put it into the database and make a total material consumption table and a comparison table of physical improvement." After Ma Wenjin said this, he felt that he had overlooked something, and quickly added again. "Call out the information of the person named Yang Mu, make a separate file, and then completely export his data to make a most detailed analysis." Ma Wenjin said this, and the researcher certainly knew why his teacher did this, and nodded, and got busy with a group of colleagues. Ma Wenjin turned his head and looked at the slowly closing white door, narrowed his eyes, raised his hand to touch his clean chin, and then quickly took off his white coat, explained a few words to several researchers, and then walked towards an elevator next to him. Chapter 85 Formal Training. Following the team out of the door of the laboratory, Yang Mu met the girls coming out of another passage at a fork in the road. Everyone just silently formed a team and followed the instructor to continue walking towards the front of the passage. There was only the sound of footsteps in the whole passage. After walking for a minute or two, the ceiling not far in front of everyone quickly opened up, revealing the starry sky outside. It seems that this is exactly what Ma Wenjin said, and he and others are right below the academy. The time is now 5 o'clock in the morning. The instructors gave everyone who came up 5 minutes to change into new training uniform and then gather in the open space in front of the dormitory. After everyone quickly completed the steps of going upstairs to change clothes and going downstairs, everyone came downstairs and stood in the specified time. At this time, the chief instructor named Long Lai was already standing on the open space. Seeing that everyone had stood in place, Long Lai raised his eyes and glanced at everyone in the field. There was still no expression on his face. He just said lightly, "Valley cross-country run, 10 laps," and need after running. Long Lai's voice was not loud, but it was very clear and everyone heard it. However, no one disobeyed Long Lai's order, because this time the other party said to run 10 laps, not 25 laps like yesterday. If it was still 25 laps, there might be some hot-headed boy or girl who would stand up and raise objections. Yang Mu understood why he and others were only allowed to run 10 laps today. Yesterday's 25 laps were obviously not a regular training course. At that time, Yang Mu found the difference. The students who were 1 year older than him stopped after running 10 laps, and then went down the mountain to start other training, while he and others were forced to continue running until they fainted, or ran the entire course and then fainted. Yesterday's practice must have been puzzling at first, and when everyone just woke up from the nutrition tank, I believe that these elites among the elites present understood what the previous torture was for. When the human body enters the self-protection mechanism, it is provided with various energy supplements needed by the body at this time, and the body's absorption speed and effect will be several times higher than usual. Yang Mu's training in the martial arts hall during the summer vacation was the same. After high-intensity training, he immediately soaked in medicine, which would quickly repair his own injuries and better absorb the medicine to strengthen his body. So after everyone received the order from the other party that was not so perverted, of course they all started running. After completing the task of 10 laps, several instructors took everyone to the cafeteria, and a group of young people were finally able to have a good meal after a day. The school still treats the students' diet with very high standards. At least when Yang Mu accidentally saw those sacks filled with various vegetables and meats printed with special supply from the Special Agricultural Star, Yang Mu was very shocked. There are only a dozen special agricultural stars in the entire PAJR star field. All kinds of crops planted on them are planted with the most primitive farming technology. Except for the necessary links using machinery, the rest are all based on their natural growth. The product pursues quality, and almost no cost is taken into account during the planting period. This also led to the fact that these special crops were almost all specially supplied. Even if they had to be bought, with a population base of tens of trillions of people in the country, Those who could eat this kind of food were either of high status or had to pay a huge price and a huge amount of money. But here, these things were actually provided for free, but they were not allowed to be wasted. Yang Mu sat on the chair, looking at the simple rice porridge, white flour buns, and fried dough sticks in front of him, and could only sigh in his heart about this evil extravagant life. I'm afraid that this meal will cost tens of thousands of yen Huan coins. But these things are not what Yang Mu and others need to care about. What they need to care about is this morning's training. After breakfast, all students immediately received a notice to go to the open training ground at the foot of the college mountain. There is a huge open space in the college, next to a mountain stream, with a large area and a wide range of uses. When Yang Mu, Jijin and Quinn ran there, the huge field was already full of people. The students from the previous class were already sweating profusely in their training uniforms. Everyone was facing each other, attacking each other fiercely as if they were enemies. However, Yang Mu discovered a detail, that is, some people had huge black iron blocks on their hands and feet, while some did not. Yang Mu just glanced at it quickly and walked towards the gathering place in the corner of the training field. There, Long Lai was standing upright, and two instructors, one male and one female, were counting the number of people next to him. Yang Mu and others quickly joined the team, and at this time everyone quickly assembled, standing neatly and waiting for the fierce-looking man in front of them to give orders. The sound of fighting among the students on the training field not far away came into his ears, but everyone turned their heads and made small movements, looking at Long Lai with their mouths tightly closed. But Long Lai stood there without looking away. The sun shone on his face, and his eyes sparkled with a glittering light. Long Lai stood there like a stubborn stone, not moving, and did not speak to issue orders. The two instructors next to him shuttled among the people standing in the team, correcting some people's standing posture from time to time. The students did not think it was strange, just thinking it was a test, and none of them raised any questions, and just stood there like that. In fact, except for the boy who asked a request when running yesterday, most of the people in the team actually performed the required tasks silently, and never asked the instructors and others for explanations on such matters. This is not that these 17 or 18-year-old boys and girls do not have the blood factor. On the contrary, this is because everyone is cherishing their opportunity to enter this academy. Everyone understands that such an opportunity is too rare for a top academy that gathers top forces. So there is no need to raise objections to the things in it. These people must have their own ideas for doing so. Especially yesterday's incident made everyone understand this truth. More than 80 people stood in a corner of the training ground, and everyone stood straight, looking at Long Lai in front of them with a firm gaze. The sun walked a distance from the east to the middle of the sky, and more than an hour passed quietly. Everyone still stood straight, sweating profusely. Some people's legs began to tremble unconsciously, but they still gritted their teeth and persisted. Standing like this was not difficult for Yang Mu. It didn't matter if he stood for 4 hours in a row in the past. Instead, Yang Mu kept thinking, is the other party doing this just to temper his character? Is it to show strict discipline? Judging from what happened yesterday, such things may not be so necessary. Just as Yang Mu was thinking about this, Long Lai finally raised his right hand and looked at the watch on his hand, and then a document was projected on the watch. Stand at attention. At this time, an instructor shouted, and everyone in the field stood in unison. Everyone looked at Long Lai again, and their eyes were full of curiosity, and Yang Mu was the same. It seems that the other party is now ready to do something. Sure enough, the next moment, Long Lai lowered his head and browsed the document on the projected screen in front of him, and then spoke. Jijin, Jimo, Tao Meng, Chu Yuming, wear heavy suits, Meng Zhu, Jiang Yiming, Anglo. Peng Song, Quinn, wear light suits. Long Lai called out the names one by one, and then the two instructors came over with a bunch of iron blocks that Yang Mu had just seen on his hands and legs, and threw them on the ground. Yang Mu watched the people who were called out come forward to receive their things, but found that he was not called out, and there were many people around him who were not called out. Do these things have to be distributed to different people? This question popped up in Yang Mu's mind, but Long Lai continued to speak at this time. Chapter 86 Regrouping. Long Lai looked at the people in the field, and saw that the people whose names were just called had already put on their equipment, and he spoke. Everyone, train in groups, 2 by 2, and fight until one of them can't stand up. Long Lai's cold words sounded, and the people in the field suddenly widened their eyes. Yang Mu was the same. Although he had guessed that the next thing would be a fight like those seniors just now, he didn't expect that it would be a fight to the death. This was simply. But Long Lai ignored the surprised expressions of the students, and directed the two instructors to start assigning groups. Yang Mu and another boy wearing a light suit were assigned to a group. Looking at what the other person was wearing, Yang Mu suddenly realized a problem at this time. Among these students in front of him, everyone's strength is actually not equal. As he just learned this morning, Ji Jin is already a level 4 physique, and the physique of many people in the field is probably only level 1. Is it really okay to assign them randomly like this? Thinking of this, Yang Mu saw Ji Mo standing in the distance, and suddenly realized something, that is, when Long Lai was calling the roll just now, Ji Mo seemed to be in the same group with Ji Jin and the others. Yang Mu glanced at the iron suit on the boy in front of him, and suddenly an idea popped into his mind, that is, are these things used to limit the strength of individuals, so that everyone's strength can be averaged? If so, the seemingly weak Ji Mo actually has a 4th level physique? This is really a ghost. Just when Yang Mu was secretly shocked, Long Lai gave an order, and all the students who were divided into groups roared and launched a fierce attack on the classmates in front of them. The boy in front of Yang Mu did the same, just raised his arm slightly, and then rushed towards Yang Mu. Each group fought in a large circle. If someone was knocked down and fell out of the circle, the winner would be able to rest for a while, and the loser would be brought out and continue to fight with the other loser. Yang Mu raised his left hand to block the opponent's right hand. When the two sides came into contact, Yang Mu's hand suddenly felt a burning pain. Yang Mu did not dare to hesitate. He lowered his footsteps and punched the opponent's waist and hips. Then he did not want to fight and quickly pulled away. The boy was obviously pushed back a few steps by Yang Mu's punch, and then he stood still and looked at Yang Mu again. Yang Mu loosened his left hand slightly, and his expression was a little serious. He did not expect that the thing on the opponent's hand would be so powerful, and he did not expect that the opponent would use the iron block in his hand as an attacking weapon. Although he was able to block it, he also suffered a big loss. The person in front of him was wearing a light suit, which meant that he had a 3rd level physique. Although he had a 2nd level physique and rich practical fighting experience, he still had to be careful. Yang Mu walked around twice cautiously, then seized the opportunity, made a fake move, and rushed over from the opponent's left side. At the same time, he clenched his left fist and raised it to be parallel to his eyes, aiming his fist directly at the opponent's face. The boy was shaken by Yang Mu's fake move and missed the best time to switch defense. Facing Yang Mu's punch, the opponent chose to defend. The boy's face was almost flushed as he raised his left and right hands with iron blocks in front of him. Yang Mu's eyes flashed, and his movements changed at this time. His whole body sank down, his left foot touched the ground, twisted his body, and then a roundhouse kick swept directly from the side to the opponent's left upper arm. Puff, the sound of falling to the ground sounded, and Yang Mu raised his eyebrows. Because his opponent was not kicked back out of the circle as he expected, but in the circle where he was standing, between the boy and him, a boy was lying on the ground holding his stomach. Looking at this sudden person, Yang Mu and the boy stopped fighting and turned their heads to look at a circle next to them. There stood a young man with brown hair. He was very thin, but he was unexpectedly so powerful. Yang Mu squinted his eyes and looked at the iron blocks on the other person's hands and feet. He realized that this person seemed to have the same level 4 physique as Ji Jin. He didn't expect that he was still so strong after being restrained. The boy lying in the circle stood up at this time, but judging from his purple face and hunched body, the man's blow might have hit him hard. At this time, an instructor came over, pulled the other person out of the circle, and then scolded Yang Mu to continue training. Yang Mu also retracted his gaze at the first time and met the eyes of the boy who was fighting against him again. Both of them had an unyielding look in their eyes. Yang Mu would not look down on the other person just because he was suppressed by him. The other person was unwilling to be suppressed by Yang Mu like this. His eyes kept scanning Yang Mu, probably looking for Yang Mu's weaknesses. But Yang Mu would not give the other person a chance like this. Without saying a word, he rushed up again with his fists. Because Yang Mu had already found the other person's weakness first. Just now, when he was fighting with the opponent, Yang Mu had been paying attention to the 2 pieces of iron in the opponent's hand. At first, Yang Mu wanted to better defend against the opponent's attack, but just now, Yang Mu found something different. The iron in the opponent's hand seemed very heavy. When he attacked just now, The opponent seemed very reluctant to raise his hands to block. Not only that, Yang Mu recalled the opponent's several active attacks. It seemed that when he swung his fists several times, he used big moves, and rarely used direct moves such as punching. This shows that the weight on the opponent's hand is very heavy, and it is difficult to overcome the sudden increase in weight on the hand. So the opponent's disadvantages are obvious, and he has a chance. Yang Mu bullied himself again, clenched his fists with both hands, found the right opportunity to swing hard. The opponent raised his hand to block, and then swept his other hand across to counterattack. But Yang Mu was waiting for this moment. He found the right opportunity and stretched out his right hand to grab the opponent's left hand. At the same time, he quickly retracted his left hand, drew a circle with his feet and turned his back to the opponent. He pulled the opponent's left hand with both hands and was about to pull the opponent to the ground. The opponent seemed to realize this and tried desperately to resist. But at this moment, Yang Mu's face sank, and the veins on his face bulged. Then he threw the opponent out. And the opponent fell out of the circle fiercely, making a loud noise. Yang Mu was also panting and standing in the circle, a little surprised. The suits on the opponent's hands and feet were too weird. They were so heavy. Such a weight was not the weight of a piece of iron of this size. The 4 small pieces of iron weighed at least hundreds of pounds. These things must be other metal materials. Yang Mu realized this problem with horror, and at this time the boy seemed to be thrown hard and did not stand up for a while. An instructor came over, looked at the other party's situation, and was about to say something to Yang Mu, but a tall figure came over. Give him a different opponent, and give him a light suit. A powerful voice sounded. It was Long Lai's voice. Yang Mu looked up at Long Lai in surprise, but Long Lai didn't look at Yang Mu, but pointed at the brown-haired boy in the circle next to him. Let them play together. Chapter 87 Being Knocked Down. Hearing Long Lai's words, Yang Mu was obviously stunned for a moment, and the instructor next to him was also stunned for a moment, and then he spoke. Boss, this student only has a second-level physique, and he has just been upgraded to the second-level physique. Long Lai did not speak, but just glanced at the instructor with a sharp look. The instructor stopped arguing and walked to the side and took a set of protective gear. Yang Mu stared at Long Lai, then turned his head to look at the brown-haired boy not far away. His eyes narrowed slightly. Long Lai's series of actions were just to pay attention to the brown-haired boy. He asked himself to put on the equipment and then asked himself to fight with the brown-haired boy, just using himself as a sandbag, all for the purpose of testing the brown-haired boy. Maybe he was not supposed to be the sandbag, but who asked him to stand next to the brown-haired boy, and just knock down someone with a better physique than himself? Did he think that a person with a second-level physique could beat a person with a fourth-level physique? Especially after he put on this suit. Yang Mu frowned, but did not refute. He just stepped forward and took the light suit from the instructor. Yang Mu put it on silently. After putting on the suit, Yang Mu suddenly felt as if there were several big stones hanging on his body. It seemed that this thing was really extraordinary. At this time, the brown-haired boy walked into the circle where Yang Mu was. My name is Tao Meng, the brown-haired boy said in a deep voice, but his expression was full of rebellion. He raised his head slightly and looked at Yang Mu. Yang Mu looked up at the other party, let out a deep breath, with a look of indifference in his eyes, and said indifferently, Yang Mu. The simple exchange between the two sides became more tense. Yang Mu was very upset because Long Lai did such a thing, and Tao Meng was because of his contempt for Yang Mu. As a military man, Tao Meng has been aspiring to become an elite among elites since he was a child, so he has always held himself to the highest standards. For this kind of fighting training program, Tao Meng has been training for 3 years. He has defeated countless masters in these 3 years, so Tao Meng is confident that he can defeat the opponent in the shortest time. Long Lai retreated at this time, standing outside the circle where the two were with his fists clasped. Although his face was still expressionless, when Yang Mu turned his head, he saw a glimmer of light in his eyes for Tao Meng. Tao Meng looked at Yang Mu, twisted his neck, and then lowered his body slightly, looking at Yang Mu with full concentration, holding his 2 fists parallel to his eyes. Yang Mu clearly saw the opponent's set of preparatory movements, and also slowly lowered his body and made the same movements. This is the most standard fighting action, lowering the individual's center of gravity, and at the same time placing the fist in the most advantageous position, which can ensure that you can swing your fist violently in a short time, and at the same time allow yourself to have enough space to protect yourself. Both of them were on guard against each other, and Yang Mu did not want to attack rashly. Although the opponent was wearing a heavy suit, he would not ignore the strength of his 4th level physique. He was able to defeat a person with a 3rd level physique, relying more on his skills and rich fighting experience. His 20 years of fighting experience, which was beyond the ordinary, could indeed help him make up for his shortcomings in strength and defeat some people who were slightly stronger but lacked skills. But now it was hard to say. From Tao Meng's actions, it was obvious that he had received professional training. At least he was able to make the same standard tactical moves as Yang Mu at the beginning, which proved that he could not find the opponent's weaknesses in the basic part. Both sides tacitly chose not to test, but I don't know if it was because he was impatient or because he had some absolute confidence in his own strength. Tao Meng suddenly launched an attack after moving a few steps. Yang Mu instantly became alert and clenched his fists. Tao Meng's steps were very fragmented when he attacked, and he always touched the ground with his toes and his heels were always raised. In this state, he could attack or defend, and he could save the initial big opening and closing movements, which could ensure that he would not expose his flaws. Yang Mu's face was grim, and he also started to move, hoping to provide himself with more opportunities in the movement. However, the weight on his hands and feet still made Yang Mu a little uncomfortable. This gray-black metal block must be a very dense material. The sudden weight of 100 pounds on his body made Yang Mu feel like he was fighting with someone on his back. Yang Mu still gritted his teeth and persisted, but he knew that he was not ready for a protracted war. In such a passive situation, there was only one thing he could do, that is, a quick battle. At this moment, Tao Meng's attack had also arrived. The body approaching suddenly swung his fist at this time, and a straight fist pointed directly at Yang Mu's face. Yang Mu naturally made a move to tilt his head to one side, and at the same time, his right hand also swung out, pointing directly at the opponent's chest and abdomen. But the situation suddenly changed. At the moment when Yang Mu's fist was swung, Tao Meng's left hand appeared from nowhere, and at this time he made an uppercut and hit the wrist of Yang Mu's swung right fist. He was actually preparing to attack Yang Mu's arm with a sheath directly. While Yang Mu was surprised, he had no way to quickly withdraw his arm. The two were too close, and no matter how he retreated, he was still within the opponent's attack range. He could only take the opponent's attack. With a snap, Yang Mu's expression suddenly frowned, and he felt that his right hand had suffered a huge blow. At the same time, he also seized this opportunity to quickly distance himself from the opponent. A burning feeling gradually came from his right forearm, and Yang Mu grinned unconsciously. He still underestimated the opponent's 4th level physical strength. When wearing such a heavy thing, the opponent's strength did not seem to be weakened. But Yang Mu had no choice but to find a strategy to deal with it. The opponent's attack came again, and this time Tao Meng showed a smug smile on his face. Tao Meng had seen a weakness of Yang Mu, and it was also the most fundamental weakness, that is, strength. The opponent's strength was weaker than his own. Even if the opponent had superb fighting skills, he would not be able to hold on as long as he was hit by him a few times. Tao Meng rushed towards Yang Mu proudly. Yang Mu shook his hand, moved again, and also rushed towards the opponent. Yang Mu couldn't think of any good way to deal with the opponent for a while, so he could only choose to fight head-on. Although this method was risky, Yang Mu didn't want to passively defend. The two held different ideas and collided in the middle of the circle. Yang Mu's fist and Tao Meng's fist came into contact. The opponent's powerful force made Yang Mu unable to stand up all of a sudden and was swung away by the opponent. But this was not over yet. The opponent's attack followed one after another, and he raised his fist and rushed towards him again. Yang Mu had retreated to the edge of the circle. Obviously, he couldn't directly withstand the opponent's attack, so he took a step and ran around the circle. Long Lai, who was standing next to him, still looked at the two expressionlessly. His eyes swept over Yang Mu's body, and then looked back at Tao Meng's body. Looking at Yang Mu's actions, Tao Meng's smile became even stronger. After fighting with him, the opponent could only choose to escape in such an embarrassing way, which meant that the opponent was very tired, which also meant that he was sure to win. Tao Meng exerted force on his feet, predicted Yang Mu's next route, kicked his feet, and flew sideways to the other side, trying to block Yang Mu. However, when his body flew in front of Yang Mu, Tao Meng suddenly saw a smile on Yang Mu's face. Sure enough, in the next moment, Yang Mu's movement stagnated, his fists loosened, his whole body lowered, and threw a beautiful sweeping kick. The opponent's body that blocked him horizontally naturally couldn't change in a short time, and then he directly accepted Yang Mu's attack. Yang Mu was not careless. He stood up, bent his body slightly, and rushed towards the opponent like a leopard. A set of fast punches was thrown straight. Tao Meng crossed his hands, and his feet kept retreating, bearing Yang Mu's attack. Yang Mu swung his fists vigorously, constantly approaching the opponent, hoping to force the opponent to the edge of the circle. Glancing at the surroundings, Yang Mu found that the opponent was retreating to the middle of the circle, which was obviously not what he wanted to see. Yang Mu quickly retracted his fist, preparing to distance himself from the opponent, but his hand froze. Yang Mu turned his head and looked over in surprise, only to see Tao Meng's left hand blocking in front of him, and his right hand grabbing his right wrist. Tao Meng slowly raised his head, with a hint of ruthlessness on his face. The next moment, before Yang Mu could make a counterattack and pull back his right hand, Tao Meng dragged Yang Mu's arm to the ground. Yang Mu's whole body was directly pulled up by the huge force from the opponent, and his whole body drew an arc in the air, and then fell heavily to the ground. The offensive and defensive sides in the field immediately exchanged positions. Yang Mu groaned, but immediately found that his right arm had been wrapped by the opponent's 2 feet, and his wrist was tightly grasped by the opponent's 2 hands. Tao Meng, who was lying on the ground, exerted force with both hands and feet at this time, and pulled Yang Mu's right hand fiercely. Intense pain came from Yang Mu's right hand. This pain seemed to tear him apart, making his face turn purple and his veins pop. Yang Mu's feet rubbed against the ground, his left hand slapped the concrete floor, and he screamed loudly. Chapter 88 Anger and Despair. The screams of pain rang out throughout the training ground. Many people stopped sparring and turned their heads to look in the direction of the screams. Some people turned their heads back and continued to fight after taking a look, while others frowned and looked at the situation in the field with some emotion. Jijin and Jimo, who were not far from the training ground, saw this scene at this time. They stopped and prepared to walk towards Yang Mu, but were scolded by the instructor next to them. Others were also scolded by the instructor and had to return to their training again. Yang Mu was trembling all over at this moment. His whole face was purple and red, and beads of sweat were pouring down his face. His expression was extremely painful. This kind of ground fighting twisting technique was very cruel. As long as the opponent was willing, he could completely pull Yang Mu's right hand to dislocate it. If the opponent's hand grabbed a little further forward, he could even tear Yang Mu's entire right hand apart alive. It was a real tear. This slow tearing feeling, which was more painful than being shot, was unbearable for Yang Mu. Yang Mu could even hear the sound of the bone in his right hand creaking. But Long Lai did not call for a stop, and the instructor next to him did not stop him. They let it all go. Yang Mu struggled even more violently, but Tao Meng's movements intensified again at this time. He seemed not satisfied with the current situation of restraining Yang Mu. He grabbed Yang Mu's right hand a little forward again with both hands, and his foot, which was originally against Yang Mu's chest, also moved up and slammed into Yang Mu's right face. Yang Mu's face suddenly felt a burning pain, and at this time the opponent's hands had already grabbed the joint of Yang Mu's right forearm. The opponent's body bent forward and sat up slightly because of the forward grabbing action. A ferocious smile flashed across Tao Meng's face. The situation that Yang Mu least wanted to see happened at this time. Tao Meng suddenly fell to the ground with his head raised again, and his body, which was bent on the ground, lay straight down, pulling Yang Mu's right hand fiercely with both hands, and kicking Yang Mu's head fiercely with both feet. He wanted to tear Yang Mu's right hand apart completely, the kind that would separate flesh and bones. Cough, cough, cough. Yang Mu's eyes suddenly widened, his mouth opened as wide as possible, his left hand now tightly clasped on the opponent's soul. Tears, sweat, snot and saliva all came out of his face that began to turn pale, and the pain of the tearing of the right half of his body made Yang Mu almost faint. But Long Lai still didn't call for a stop. There was still no instructor in the field to stop him. The heart-wrenching screams spread throughout the field again, and everyone stopped moving. At this time, Jijin, who was far away, kicked his opponent out of the circle with one foot, and rushed towards Yang Mu's circle at a rapid speed. Jimo did the same, throwing his opponent out of the circle, and even kicked away the instructor who was trying to stop him, and also rushed towards Yang Mu. The roars of 4 people rang out throughout the training ground, and the 4 of them broke away from their respective circles and rushed towards Yang Mu. But they were too far away, and Yang Mu's arm might not be able to hold out for that long. Yang Mu opened his mouth wide, unable to shout, and his right face was swollen from the opponent's kicking. Yang Mu could no longer feel his right hand. The opponent's kicking continued, and Yang Mu's eyes gradually turned red. Yang Mu turned to the right with difficulty, and his whole face was exposed under the opponent's shoe. Yang Mu resisted the opponent's kick on his head, bent his left knee with difficulty, bent his body, and pushed hard against the opponent's right thigh. After a fierce collision, the opponent's right leg loosened a little. Yang Mu's mouth was bleeding, but he still endured the pain of the opponent tearing his arm, and hit the opponent's right leg with his knee again and again. At this time, all the people around were looking at Yang Mu and Tao Meng lying on the ground. Some girls were so scared by such a tragic scene that they covered their eyes. But Yang Mu's attack did not stop, again and again. Finally, the opponent's right leg loosened, and Yang Mu used his left hand, which had been bleeding, to forcefully pull away the opponent's right foot, and then rolled his body and quickly kicked his feet towards the opponent's face. After a fierce blow, someone in the field secretly shouted "Good." Yang Mu was already furious at this moment. Although his face was covered with snot, tears and saliva, and his injuries were serious, Yang Mu's heart was filled with incomparable anger. The young man in front of him actually had such a vicious heart that he really wanted to tear off his right hand. Such a vicious action would even ruin Yang Mu's future. If his right hand was really broken, even if he could repair his right hand, he would probably not be able to perform the difficult actions of the mecha in the future. Yang Mu was really angry, an unprecedented anger. The man in front of him wanted to ruin his future like this. Everyone must die. Under the shocked gaze of the crowd, Yang Mu, with red eyes, pulled back his right hand, stood up quickly, and held the opponent's right foot tightly with his left hand. Tao Meng kicked his legs hard to regain the initiative, but what he got was Yang Mu's fierce drag. Tao Meng's attack was disrupted by this action, and the whole person was lying on the ground and dragged by Yang Mu. In the next second, Yang Mu stopped suddenly, slightly stepped back with his right foot to accumulate strength, and kicked Tao Meng's stomach hard. Tao Meng's face suddenly showed a painful expression, but before he could recover, Yang Mu's right foot attacked again, and kicked him hard in the chest. Yang Mu kicked hard, and then dragged the opponent up. Tao Meng's attack rhythm was disrupted again and again, and he began to bear the attack from Yang Mu. The two people in the field are now in a very tragic state. At this time, Tao Meng's training uniform on his back had been worn out by the ground, and blood marks had appeared on his entire back. The whole person was a little exhausted under Yang Mu's attack, and he could no longer use his hands to block Yang Mu's attack. At this time, Yang Mu pulled up his foot, turned it hard, and then suddenly let go, and the opponent fell out of the circle, but Yang Mu's action was not over yet, and he walked up quickly. Tao Meng, who was lying on the ground, only groaned faintly at this moment, and his eyes were dazed. Yang Mu slowly raised his right foot, and this time the target was the opponent's head. "Stop," a powerful voice suddenly came. But Yang Mu did not stop his action as if he did not hear it, and continued to kick hard. But just when his foot was about to make close contact with the opponent's head, Yang Mu was suddenly pushed from the side. It was the instructor who had been standing by and not moving just now. The defenseless Yang Mu was pushed and rolled out directly, and fell on his face on the ground. He was unable to get up for a while. The students next to him stepped back and looked at Long Lai in the field. Some people were about to come forward to help the two up. "He has already left the circle, and the competition is over," Long Lai said coldly, and the students in the field immediately whispered. Yang Mu. At this time, Jijin and the other four had already rushed over. Seeing the two people lying in the field, Jijin and Qian hurried forward to help Yang Mu up. At this moment, Yang Mu was almost unrecognizable. His whole face was swollen because of the fierce kick just now. There were fine gravel on his face and blood was flowing out. Ahem, Yang Mu coughed lightly, and his voice seemed a little weak, but he shook off Jijin and Qian who were supporting him. Under the gaze of many students in the field, Yang Mu stepped forward step by step and slowly walked towards Long Lai. His drooping right hand swayed on the right side of his body. Yang Mu covered his right hand with his left hand, staggered forward, raised his head, and Yang Mu's swollen eyes barely opened to look at Long Lai in front of him. Long Lai looked down at Yang Mu, silent, but with deep shock in his eyes. "Instructor Long, are you satisfied?" Long Lai did not speak, but just glanced at Tao Meng lying on the ground in the distance, and then looked back at Yang Mu in front of him. Take him down to heal his wounds, Long Lai said calmly, then turned around and was about to leave. Ahem. Instructor Long, you let Tao Meng go, but I haven't agreed yet. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89, Angry. Yang Mu's murderous voice sounded, and everyone in the field took a breath of cold air. No one expected that this young man would be so impulsive and actually challenge the chief instructor of the academy. Long Lai stopped when he heard Yang Mu's words, looked back in Yang Mu's direction, then turned around and looked up at Yang Mu. Yang Mu also looked at Long Lai, with a red light in his swollen eyes. When a person is dying, if he can turn the situation around, then he will fight back desperately at this time. There will be no calm factor in his mind at this time, only a stubborn idea, that is, to knock the opponent down, beat the opponent so that he can't stand up and can't bring any threat to himself. If necessary, you can kill the opponent without mercy. And Yang Mu is in such a situation at the moment. There is no sober look in his red eyes, only tyranny. Yang Mu is not such an impulsive person. Decades of experience have made him restrain his edge and keep a low profile. However, when this sword is taken out from the dark corner and pulled out from the dusty scabbard, it will surely shine with a cold light and reveal its sharp edge. Yang Mu is like this now. When the shackles of forbearance deep in his heart are broken by the crisis, the anger hidden in it will burst out, making Yang Mu desperate and even challenge Long Lai. Jijin had already noticed that Yang Mu's state was a little wrong at this time, so he stepped forward to hold Yang Mu, but he didn't expect Yang Mu to take action earlier. Yang Mu clenched his left hand, which was the only one that could move, into a fist and rushed straight towards Long Lai, with his fist raised high and pointed directly at Long Lai's face. The students watching nearby couldn't help but exclaim when they saw Yang Mu's sudden attack. Jijin's face suddenly showed a trace of emotion, but he couldn't stop Yang Mu from attacking Long Lai. Yang Mu rushed towards Long Lai with his broken body, and the fierceness in his eyes made Yang Mu look very crazy at this moment. But when Yang Mu was less than 2 meters away from Long Lai's eyes flashed, and his body also moved. His strong body took 2 steps forward, and his sturdy right hand reached forward and grabbed Yang Mu's neck, then slowly lifted Yang Mu up. At this moment, Long Lai was like a strong lion, while Yang Mu was a young lion with weak teeth and claws, strangled by the other party's neck, unable to move. Long Lai looked at Yang Mu's expressionless face, watching Yang Mu struggling in his hands. Long Lai exerted force in his hands and threw Yang Mu out directly. Jijin hurried forward and struggled to catch Yang Mu, who was flying over. But Yang Mu had already fainted. Bang! Long Lai. Don't you take me, an old man, seriously? In the top floor room of the retro attic, Yan Shenfu was roaring with an angry face, and the broken porcelain pieces on the ground showed what kind of scene he had just experienced. On the sofa next to him, Long Lai, the chief instructor of the students, was squatting there, his hands curled up on his knees, his head down, his face still with that cold expression, his eyes looking at the floor, but he didn't make any excuses. Hey, old Yan, why are you so angry? Yang Qin on the side was pulling Yan Shenfu's arm to stop him from making any more radical moves. Calm down, you are so old, and besides, isn't he fine? Still calm. Calm down, I finally found a kid. A kid with such strong plasticity, and he almost ruined it. Yan Shenfu is relentless, his eyes were full of anger, and he pointed at Long Lai in front of him. If Yang Qin hadn't been holding him, Yan Shenfu might even rush over to punch and kick Long Lai. Just now, Yan Shenfu was making final preparations for the courses to be taught in the next few days, but suddenly learned that Yang Mu was beaten into the infirmary, and his whole state was very bad. Yan Shenfu, who was eager to be his disciple, rushed to the infirmary, but he saw Yang Mu who looked like a human. He also learned that Yang Mu's right hand had been severely lacerated, and he wanted to find Mao Engine to treat him. You can imagine how bad Yang Mu's injuries were when he asked the best doctor here to treat him. Yan Shenfu was furious at that time, his whole face flushed, and he rushed into Yang Qin's office and asked him to find Long Lai. So what happened next? Although Yang Mu didn't receive excellent training from childhood like the elites you selected, and he doesn't have a strong family background, it doesn't mean that he can be bullied like this just because he is of ordinary origin. But don't forget who was the first to pass the assessment and get here, and don't forget that he scored first in the entrance examination. Fuck you. If Yang Mu has something wrong today, I will make the whole family of the Tao family get out of the new Han Star region. Yan Shanfu's expression became more and more excited as he spoke more and more angry. He slammed the table with his right hand and roared at Long Lai. Okay, what are you talking about? You are a grandfather, how can you say such childish things? Yang Qin, who was standing aside, naturally understood that these words were actually spoken to him. Yang Qin had also noticed this kid named Yang Mu, but before he could get to know him better, such a thing happened. Long Lai still did not speak, but lowered his head even lower, and curled up beside the sofa, not daring to make any rebuttal. Yan Shanfu snorted heavily, looking at Long Lai with a very unfriendly look. I'm going to say this today. I don't object to normal training, even if he dies on the battlefield because of the mission later, but this kind of thing that hurts his bones and ruins his future on the training ground must never happen again. Yan Shanfu angrily shook off Wu Yanqin, walked to the door, opened the door, and turned his head to Long Lai who was squatting inside and said, If Zhong Liang hadn't been on a mission these days, I would have made you suffer this kind of punishment today. Bang. The office door slammed shut. Yang Qin watched Yan Shanfu leave angrily, glanced at Long Lai who was still squatting beside the sofa, and sighed. Hey, Lai, get up. Yang Qin said this, walked to the side and took out a broom, ready to sweep up the broken porcelain pieces. Long Lai finally raised his head, stood up, and rushed to take the broom from Wu Yanqin's hand. Master, let me do it. No one thought that Yang Qin would be Long Lai's master. Yang Qin handed the broom to Long Lai, looked up at his apprentice, sighed, and stood aside helplessly and said, Lai, you did something wrong today. These little kids just came, and they used such a cruel trick. It's still not right. Long Lai's hand holding the broom trembled. He didn't expect that his teacher also denied him about this matter. I'm not blaming you. I gave you the physical and tactical training of my students because I believed in your ability. It's just that this method is too radical, Yang Qin continued. But, my original intention was to make them abide by the rules of the game, Long Lai said a little awkwardly. The criterion for winning or losing in a fight is whether or not you get out of the circle, and that Tao Meng, I didn't call a halt after he was knocked down, I only called a halt after he got out of the circle. Long Lai's powerful voice sounded, and a trace of determination still flashed across his eyes. I would rather they get injured in training than lose their lives in vain on the battlefield. Yang Qin heard Long Lai's words, looked at his once proud apprentice again, and sighed. As a master, how could Yang Qin not hear the other meanings in the sentence? What he experienced on the battlefield that year, and then he was framed and spent a very dark period. This action of squatting aside was also trained at that time. That's true, but it depends on the person. Yang Qin was silent for a moment, slowly walked to the window, raised his eyes to look outside, and then turned to look at Long Lai. Do you know why old Yan attaches so much importance to this kid named Yang Mu? Long Lai raised his head and looked at Yang Qin, obviously wanting to know the answer. According to the data we collected, Yang Mu's family background is not strong, and there is a gap compared to those children with golden keys, but old Yan told me that this little guy can actually see through the weaknesses of an advanced mecha at a glance, and can analyze the reasons with reason and evidence. If he had received relevant training before that, this might not be too surprising, but it is because of his background that all this seems precious. An ordinary high school student, in addition to studying the necessary courses and learning humbly, has not received much training, but it is precisely because of this that he can see things that a group of old scholars may not be able to see immediately, such as seedling. Yan Shanfu can't help but be tempted, and according to Yan Shanfu's description, this child has also contributed to the destruction of a star pirate group in the new star domain. Such a state of mind is even more precious. You know that old Yan's previous apprentice, Alice. Long Lai listened to his master's sighing words, lowered his head, and remained silent. Yang Qin glanced at Long Lai, and naturally knew what his apprentice was thinking, and continued. There is another piece of news. The young man just now has jumped from the second level to the third level. You know, 2 days ago, he was only a first-level student. Yang Qin's heavy words rang out in the room. We are getting old, and we have to start looking for successors. Long Lai was obviously stunned for a moment, and then the action in his hands paused for a moment, and then suddenly raised his head, turned his back to Yang Qin, looked at the bookshelf in front of him, and said slowly, Teacher, I understand. Chapter 90 Goodbye. Cuz Yang Mu felt that feeling again, The feeling of lying in cotton, the whole body was wrapped in a warm feeling, making people linger. This long-lost comfort made Yang Mu hum and hum, and then slowly opened his eyes. What he saw was pure white, but Yang Mu was stunned for a moment. Because this place was very familiar to him. Regardless of the comfort around him, Yang Mu sat up suddenly, and then stood on the white ground. Looking up, it was all white, and Yang Mu frowned. "Looking for me?" An abrupt voice sounded behind Yang Mu. Yang Mu turned around suddenly and saw the familiar yet unfamiliar figure not far away. Cuz still looked like Yang Mu at this moment, wearing a white dress, sitting on a white chair, and picking up a white teacup from the white table next to him, and sipping it slowly. Yang Mu stood up straight, looking at Cuz with burning eyes. This face of his always made Yang Mu feel a little uncomfortable. How does it feel to explode? After a moment of silence, Cuz held the teacup, looked up and said, with a knowing smile on his face, "Do you feel refreshed? What on earth did you do to me?" Yang Mu stepped forward and glared at the other party. Yang Mu didn't expect that the other party knew so much about him, and he didn't even have any memory of the fight just now. He only remembered that the boy named Tao Meng kicked his face with his foot, and his right hand felt a huge pain of tearing. But what happened to him afterwards? Why did he appear here? Why did Cuz in front of him know all these things? Yang Mu's back was covered with goosebumps, and his heart was a little disturbed. Cuz smiled and put the teacup on the table, then stood up, and waved his right hand gently, and the things just now disappeared like smoke and dust. Only Yang Mu and Cuz were left in the whole white space. Cuz slowly approached Yang Mu, and the sound of his shoes hitting the ground rang out in this white space. The expression on Yang Mu's face became more serious, and he stared at Cuz who was walking towards him. "You will slowly learn about these things later," Cuz said lightly, walked in front of Yang Mu, stopped, rolled his eyes, and finally met Yang Mu's eyes. "As for calling you here this time, I just want to tell you one thing." Cuz's hand swung again, and two floating screens suddenly appeared in front of Yang Mu, showing two portraits. They were the pictures of Ji Jin and Ji Mo. Yang Mu's face showed an expression of confusion, and he looked at the two pictures suspiciously, and then looked up at Cuz. "What do you mean?" Yang Mu suppressed the shock in his heart and asked in a deep voice. Cuz smiled, and there was no ripple in his eyes. "Get in touch with these two people more, it's good for you." Cuz said so, and then his body began to slowly dissipate. Yang Mu frowned even more tightly, completely not understanding the meaning of the other party's words, and asked anxiously, "Why do you say that?" "Wait, how do you know these two people?" Yang Mu asked in surprise, and at this time Cuz's figure was about to dissipate. "You will understand this later. Oh, by the way, congratulations on reaching the 3rd level of physical fitness now. Keep up the good work." Cuz did not answer Yang Mu's question, but said this. Yang Mu's eyes widened, and he wanted to ask something, but at this moment, a black vortex suddenly appeared under his feet, and Yang Mu suddenly fell into it. "Ah!" Yang Mu shouted, gasping for breath, and suddenly opened his eyes. The white room was still in sight. Yang Mu turned his head and looked at the side, and happened to meet the eyes of a nurse next to him. The nurse was surprised that Yang Mu woke up so quickly, and hurriedly turned around and walked to the next room, calling the others in. The next moment, several doctors and nurses came over in a hurry, and Yang Mu immediately recognized Ma Wenjin, who was walking in front. "Young man, I didn't expect that we would meet again after just a few hours." Ma Wenjin smiled, walked up, and checked Yang Mu's condition. Yang Mu suddenly realized that his right hand was injured, and turned his head to look over. He saw that he was wearing a cylinder on his right hand, and his right hand was completely immersed in the green liquid. His arm felt a little itchy. "Don't worry, this is a muscle-growing liquid. Your right hand is just severely torn, not dislocated or fractured. It will be a good arm in the future," Ma Wenjin added when he saw Yang Mu's anxious look. Hearing Ma Wenjin's words, Yang Mu finally breathed a sigh of relief. He smiled with difficulty on his gauze-wrapped face and said, "Thank you, it's okay, you have a good rest, and I promise you will be a lively guy tomorrow morning." Ma Wenjin showed an expression of acceptance on his face, and said straightforwardly, then told the nurse next to him a few words. Just as he was about to leave, Ma Wenjin seemed to have thought of something and turned around. "The data about you has been reported, and the decision above is to give you a special process." Ma Wenjin said this and turned over the display panel. "Come to the laboratory every Monday for strengthening." Ma Wenjin was not asking Yang Mu's opinion, but issuing an order. Just this morning, Ma Wenjin hurriedly reported that Yang Mu could absorb a large amount of nutrient solution and strengthening agent in a short period of time. The dean also took it very seriously and communicated with the higher-ups in time, and then issued an order to Ma Wenjin. That is, without harming the student's body, increase the number of experiments appropriately to obtain more important data. Ma Wenjin had just arranged the process and was about to notify Yang Mu in the afternoon, but he was called to the infirmary at this time, and he actually met Yang Mu, who was unconscious here. Fortunately, Yang Mu didn't have any major problems, and Ma Wenjin happily told him the result. Yang Mu was still a little confused when he heard it, and didn't quite understand what the other party meant, but Ma Wenjin just hurriedly told Yang Mu to have a good rest, and left. Watching the doctors leave one by one after he carefully examined himself, Yang Mu couldn't help but ask the nurse next to him. "Sister, how is a classmate named Tao Meng who is the same age as me?" Yang Mu had also entered this state of selflessness before. The consequence was that he remembered nothing when he woke up, and the enemies he thought of were lying on the ground one by one. Yang Mu was a little worried that he would be too heavy-handed in the future, so he asked a question. As for his own state, Yang Mu dared not reveal it. If he said it easily, I believe that Ma Wenjin just now would be eager to pull him onto the operating table, slice him, and conduct research. He is better, with 2 broken ribs and some skin injuries. He is resting in the ward next door, the nurse said so. Yang Mu let out more breath and expressed his gratitude to the nurse. The nurse left the ward, and the whole ward returned to silence. Yang Mu looked at the pure white ceiling and remembered what Cuz said in the dream. Why should he build a good relationship with Ji Jin and Ji Mo? Chapter 91 Yan Shenfu's class. Yang Mu, you've done a great job. In the cafeteria, Yang Mu, who was feeding himself porridge with his left hand, paused for a moment, and all the porridge in the spoon sloshed back into the bowl. What do you mean? Yang Mu looked at Ji Mo, who was sitting opposite him with 2 big braids, with a confused look on his face. Medical technology has reached a very advanced level in this era. As long as the injury is not a bone fracture, it can be quickly healed under various medical means, not to mention the help of muscle growth fluid. Yang Mu was able to do some exercise in the ward at night, and his swollen face became thinner. However, for the sake of safety, Yang Mu's right hand was still tied up, and the doctor told Yang Mu not to do any strenuous exercise. In addition, Yan Shenfu also came to see Yang Mu last night, but he did not mention anything about this matter. He just told Yang Mu that he would go to the advanced class with him starting tomorrow, and he would go back to training until his injury healed. Yang Mu agreed at that time, but this morning, Yang Mu still appeared in the freshman training team on time. Long Lai also saw Yang Mu, but he didn't say anything and continued to direct a group of students to start morning exercises. Then Yang Mu came to the cafeteria just like now, and sat with Ji Jin, Ji Mo, Qian and Yuan Miao to eat. The cooperation of the 5 people at the time of enrollment allowed them to talk a few words. After yesterday's incident, Yang Mu was also willing to go with this group of close friends. They also started to chat with Yang Mu very skillfully. The most unexpected one among them was Ji Mo. Originally, Yang Mu thought she was a quiet girl, but he didn't expect that she would be broken in a second. Ji Jin and Qian sat next to Ji Mo. Neither of them spoke, but asked about Yang Mu's injuries on the way. After learning that he was fine, they said to have a good rest. But Ji Mo and Yuan Miao were very curious. At this moment, the spoons in their hands were stuck in the bowls in front of them, and both pairs of big eyes were staring at Yang Mu. Yang Mu, don't you know? Your glorious deeds of challenging the chief instructor have spread throughout the school. Others say you are a ruthless person, Ji Mo said so. Yang Mu's face twitched. Yes, classmate Yang Mu, you did a good thing for us. At least yesterday afternoon, that red-scarred face didn't dare to be so ruthless. Yuan Miao, who was sitting next to Yang Mu, also said at this time. You two are flattering Yang Mu. Besides, there are only 200 students in the whole school. Isn't it normal for everyone to know about one thing? Shut up, eat your meal. The 2 girls turned their heads at the same time and glared at Quinn, who interrupted their curiosity. Quinn shrugged and buried his head in his breakfast. Hey, Yang Mu, what's your relationship with that old man in a tank suit? Ji Mo turned her head and continued to ask, with a strange light flashing in her eyes. Old man? I think she was asking about Yan Shenfu. Yang Mu lowered his head and scooped a spoonful of porridge and drank it slowly. Nothing, just a kind old man. Ji Mo raised the corner of her mouth and rolled her eyes at Yang Mu. Yuan Miao did the same thing, Who are you kidding? Do you know how angry he was when he came to the infirmary yesterday and saw your miserable state? Yes, and when you first entered school, the old man admired you very much? And it seems that you two are very familiar with each other, or are you his grandson? That's not right. The old man's surname seems to be Yan. Yuan Miao added at the right time. There seemed to be some kind of tacit understanding between the two girls. They talked one after another, and the topic gradually deviated from the original track, leaving Yang Mu speechless and his mouth twitching. Yang Mu avoided their eyes and glanced at Jijin and Quinn, who were sitting at the same table, wanting to seek help. But these two guys walked away without hearing anything, concentrating on eating the breakfast in front of them. It seems that he can only solve it himself. Yang Mu showed a perfunctory smile and stretched out his left hand to put a piece of bread into his mouth. Well, this bread is delicious, eat it quickly. How could Jimo and Yuan Miao not see that Yang Mu was just trying to fool them? They glared at him and prepared to attack him, but when they saw Yang Mu's injured right hand, they could only pout, turn around, put down their hands, and vent their anger on the breakfast in front of them. Freshmen had to undergo a 3-month military training. Yang Mu needed a week or so to recover because of his injury, and Yan Shenfu asked him to sit in on the class. Yang Mu was happy to see this and went to the teaching place on time. The teaching place was also an ancient pavilion, hidden in a symphony of scenery, which seemed quiet. The green all over the eyes would also make people feel happy. Such an environment would indeed make people feel relaxed and refreshed, and their thoughts clear, but it would also attract some people to be distracted. But this was none of Yang Mu's business. When Yang Mu walked into the classroom on the attic with his arm hanging, the people sitting inside immediately noticed Yang Mu. Some people seemed to recognize Yang Mu and were secretly pointing at Yang Mu and the students next to him and saying something. Yang Mu was not in the mood to pay attention to the conversation between these people. Instead, he was a little surprised by the layout of this classroom. The entire classroom has an area of about 200 square meters. In the middle of the classroom is a circle, surrounded by circles of stepped seats, and around the platform in the middle, various mechanical parts are piled up. At the same time, above the platform, a holographic imaging device is hanging from the ceiling, and at this moment, it is projecting the objects placed on the pit exhibition stand. Yang Mu has never seen such a teaching method. When he was studying at Taishan College, the theoretical class was explained by the teacher and the students took notes. In the practical class, each group took a machine, disassembled it, reassembled it, and then wrote an experimental report. But this class is obviously a theoretical class, but there are such advanced equipment in the classroom. It seems that this class will be very interesting. Yang Mu thought so in his heart, walked into the classroom, found a seat in the front row and sat down, quietly waiting for Yan Shenfu to arrive. After whispering about Yang Mu, the seniors around him stopped and began to prepare. It seems that everyone is just curious for a while, and learning is still the most important thing. After a while, Yan Shenfu walked into the classroom slowly, holding a teacup. Yan Shenfu was still wearing loose clothes, and his pure white clothes made him look like an immortal. He only held a teacup in his hand. At this moment, he walked to the center of the platform with ease, and then put the teacup on the operating table above, and looked up to scan the field. Seeing Yang Mu sitting in front of him, Yan Shenfu showed a gratified expression on his face and nodded. Yang Mu also smiled back. Ahem, okay, let's get ready for class next, Yan Shenfu said so. Today our topic is whether the location of the mechanical battery device is reasonable, and the relevant application discussion in the warship, Yan Shenfu said so, and at the same time clicked the floating screen next to the operating table. The mechanical parts on the entire platform rose up, which was obviously a part of the left waist of a mecha. Before that, let me ask you a question. Why is the mecha battery installed in this position? What kind of defects does this position have? You have 5 minutes. The students in the classroom began to discuss and calculate. Yang Mu also pretended to open the floating computer display. At the same time, Yan Shenfu also skillfully put on his lab coat and protective tools, adjusted his goggles, and then bent down and pulled out a iron chainsaw. Chapter 92 Different Views. Looking at the huge chainsaw on the table, Yang Mu was very surprised, but Yang Mu found that other students in the classroom seemed to be accustomed to such scenes. They had no expression and still lowered their heads to discuss and search for relevant information. It seems that this is Yan Shenfu's normal state. Yang Mu thought so and saw Yan Shenfu's 2 eyes looking at him at this moment. Yang Mu quickly lowered his head and stretched out his left hand to fiddle with the computer. In fact, Yang Mu already had a rough answer to the question Yan Shenfu just asked, and Yang Mu also guessed that the part of the mecha on the table was from that model of mecha. But Yang Mu was not going to be the first to speak. At this time, the sound of the chainsaw was heard on the operating table. Yang Mu looked up and almost dropped his chin on the table because of the scene in front of him. Yan Shenfu, who originally had a kind face and seemed extremely kind, was now concentrating, holding the huge chainsaw with both hands, violently and roughly cutting the mecha part on the table. The sparks flying all over the place were out of tune with the old face of Yan Shenfu. This strange style of painting really refreshes people's free views. After a long 5 minutes, Yan Shenfu cut open the mecha component, then knocked on the metal operating table with an alloy wrench and looked up at the students in the field. Okay, do you have an answer? Who'll answer? Everyone in the field raised their hands immediately, and everyone's eyes were hard and a little competitive. Yang Mu turned his head to look at these people, touched his nose with his left hand, and raised his hand. Yan Shenfu didn't have any special cold for such a hot scene, and casually pointed to a black-haired boy sitting in the middle. Teacher Yan, this position is located at the back waist of the mecha, with a socket on both sides. There are not many core components here, and there is more spare space. It is also convenient for the mecha to replace the battery itself, but the disadvantage of this position, the boy hesitated for a moment, but still shook his head. Yan Shenfu nodded calmly and said, are there any students who want to add? Now there are fewer people raising their hands in the field, but there are still many people who still raise their hands. Yan Shenfu ordered another big wave of blonde hair. The big wave stood up, first lifted her hair, then looked at Yan Shenfu with a serious look, and said, Teacher Yan, I think the disadvantage of this part is that it belongs to the waist and hips of the mecha. The location is relatively weak in terms of protective armor because it is necessary to ensure the flexibility of the mecha. Once it is attacked and broken through, it will cause great trouble to the mecha. Yan Shenfu pursed his lips and showed a little bit of approval, but he seemed a little dissatisfied, and raised his head and said, Please sit down, female student. What she just said is indeed a very obvious problem. This position does have this defect, and various countries have been working on improving it, so I want to ask another question here, that is, if the position of this battery is to be changed, then where should this battery be installed? Yan Shenfu threw out another question, and the students in the field lowered their heads and began to think about the answer. After a moment, a boy wearing thick glasses raised his hand. Teacher Yan, I think this position can be changed to the armpit, the boy said. Armpit? Yan Shenfu raised his eyebrows, seeming to be interested in the other party's answer. How do you explain it? Seeing that the world's top mecha designer in front of him was somewhat interested in his answer, the boy was very excited and said excitedly, I think there are 3 reasons for changing to that place. First, this position can solve the problem of weak protection just now. At the same time, it does not hinder the mecha from changing batteries. In addition, it is close to the main engine of the mecha, which can provide energy in time and reduce the loss caused by energy transmission. Yang Mu listened to the other party's answer and nodded in his heart, because the points he said were all correct and used in practice. However, he overlooked a problem. That is, there is not much space there, and it will interfere with the air intake of the jet engine. Of course, space mechas are another matter. Yang Mu turned his head to look at Yan Shenfu and found that the smile on his face was also very forced. Then let me ask you another question. Since this design has so many advantages, why do we still use the waist as the battery slot in today's mechas, and rarely see this design? Yan Shenfu asked another question. The boy was stunned for a moment and didn't know how to answer. The eyes of the others present also flashed. Yan Shenfu asked the boy to sit down, then slowly turned around and looked at Yang Mu. Yang Mu immediately felt something was wrong. Yang Mu, you answer this question. Yan Shenfu stretched out his hand and gestured to Yang Mu. Many students in the field looked at Yang Mu, and at the same time, a little surprised expression appeared on their faces. They didn't expect that the teacher in front of them would ask a freshman to answer this question. Although this question is not profound, there is no way to explain it with basic mechanical knowledge. When Yan Shenfu asked a question and there was no sound in the field, Yang Mu only knew that he was going to be pulled out by Yan Shenfu. Yang Mu stood up helplessly, sighed, looked up at Yan Shenfu, brooded for a while, and said the answer in his heart. In fact, I think that if the battery of this mecha on the planet needs to be replaced, It should be placed between the two shoulder blades of the mecha, above the main engine. Yang Mu said this, and there was an uproar in the field. The boy with glasses who had just sat down also stood up immediately and refuted Yang Mu's statement. I oppose this student's idea. This method requires the battery to withstand the higher temperature from the engine. At the same time, the mecha in this position has no way to replace the battery by itself. The boy didn't expect that the first half of his words could actually be used to refute his own point of view. Many students in the field obviously did not agree with the other party's opinion, but they still whispered and shook their heads. Yan Shanfu waved his hand at this time, asking Yang Mu to continue. Everyone quieted down, and careful people even saw a hint of appreciation in Yan Shanfu's eyes. Yang Mu thought for a moment again, combined with his years of practical experience and professional knowledge, and spoke. On the battlefield, the mecha's battery is an important weakness and should be placed in the position that is most difficult to be attacked. Because energy is the fundamental factor that ensures whether the mecha can complete military tasks, although the mecha's battery consumption is large, it can be used intensively for 15 minutes with the support of 2 batteries, and can be used normally for up to 1 hour. Yang Mu analyzed it rationally. The battery's resistance should be ranked first on the battlefield, so the location of the battery needs to be better arranged. As for whether the mecha can replace the battery by itself, I think it is completely unnecessary to consider. On the battlefield, the battery can be replaced by teammates, and if there is a situation of single soldier combat, I think the mecha can mount a secondary battery, and use the built-in main battery after being damaged or entering combat status. Yang Mu's words made many students in the field suddenly make disdainful sounds, but Yan Shanfu suddenly laughed. Chapter 93, Out of the Box. Yan Shanfu's loud laughter made everyone in the field feel awkward, because Yan Shanfu's laughter was obviously a heartfelt laughter of satisfaction because it was very much in line with his own wishes, rather than a belly laugh at the other party's wild imagination. Some people began to restrain their disdainful expressions on their faces because of Yan Shanfu's smile, and seriously pondered whether the things proposed by this new student were really correct. Yang Mu was also a little confused when looking at Yan Shanfu's expression at this moment, but Yang Mu was sure that the things he said were objectively existing, and would also be a mainstream design direction in the future. At least the technology he just mentioned had already been applied to his Annihilation. The battery was placed inside the lower part of the neck of the Annihilation carapace. As for the auxiliary battery plan, it was a very old plan, equivalent to the auxiliary fuel tank on a flying fighter, and it should have been applied in the elite mechas of various countries now, right? Not only that, Yang Mu also knew that in the design drawings of the anti-insect mechas that flooded into his mind, the battery installation position was also on the back, but the batteries of those mechas were a little different. And it seemed that Annihilation had no power after the last battle. How to replenish it? I got off topic. Yang Mu shook his head and looked back at the field, but saw that Yan Shanfu had stopped laughing and was standing in front of the operating table, scanning the students in the field. After a moment, Yan Shanfu spoke in a deep voice. I know that everyone scoffs at such a plan and thinks that this method has great hidden dangers. Everyone has also put forward some constructive opinions, and some of the ideas are indeed what countries are currently studying, but Yan Shanfu's voice sounded, and suddenly stopped. At this time, all the students in the field were alert. Everyone quickly spread out their papers and pens, sat upright, and prepared to listen to Yan Shanfu's next words. A world-class engineer? A top engineer who developed several advanced mechas that are 3 times more powerful than ordinary mechas in service, said, but at this moment. Then what he is going to say next is absolutely extremely explosive. If it weren't for the fact that the only things that can be taken out of here are brains and paper and pens, these guys would have wanted to record and tape the video at the same time. Especially the selected students from various countries, they didn't even dare to blink, for fear of missing any details of Yan Shanfu. Yang Mu saw the changes in the crowd, and was a little confused, but he also sat up straight. Yan Shanfu's face was serious. He looked at the students putting their notebooks away and said, We have all embarked on a wrong path. As soon as Yan Shanfu said this, there was an uproar in the crowd. Such words, for everyone in the crowd, are tantamount to subverting their previous worldview, but such a sentence happened to be spoken by such a respected person. We always think about problems as designers, or we always think about problems from the perspective of the overall situation, so this kind of thinking solidifies our imagination, so that even if we want to make a breakthrough, we are closely attached to the foundation of our predecessors. This leads to the fact that it seems that we are designing outside the original framework, but we didn't expect that the original framework has actually been binding ourselves. Not only that, in many cases, we just study a certain technology with the attitude of a scientific researcher, but we have not fully considered whether this kind of thing can really help a lot when it is applied in actual combat, or whether such a thing can really bring personal help to the mecha driver. I'm not your military teacher, so I won't say much about this. What I want to point out is that because of this solidified idea of comprehensively enhancing the performance of a single mecha, we finally chose this wrong research and development path, and everyone forgets that we are not the ones who drive these mechas to the battlefield. The ones who go to the battlefield are those soldiers, those battle-hardened soldiers, Yan Shenfu said calmly, and everyone suddenly felt that they had touched something different. We always think about how to make something like this in the laboratory. We want to make it to the extreme, to be flawless, to consider every situation very clearly, and then to come up with the most specific solution to each problem. The method and steps of doing experiments are correct, but on the real battlefield, soldiers will not consider this or that. What they need is very simple, that is, this mecha can protect themselves, launch attacks, and help them win the war. Other details are redundant and may even become a burden. Yan Shenfu said this while shaking his head, then turned and walked to the side of the part that had just been cut, unfolded the cross-section that had just been cut, pointed at it and said, "Take the components of this War Dragon mech as an example. Everyone should know this mech, the interplanetary combat mech independently developed by PAJR New Song Star Domain. 10 years ago, this mech was a very popular model and was even called a model of comprehensive mech, but after only 3 years, this mech was eliminated, and the public explanation given at the time was that related technical problems were difficult to optimize. But what exactly is difficult to optimize? This is it. Yan Shenfu reached out and forcefully dug out a battery inside. The battery that was cut in half was still the size of 8 bricks stacked together, and Yan Shenfu still had some difficulty holding it in both hands. At that time, in order to pursue a comprehensive improvement in the comprehensive performance of this mecha and hope to make an overall breakthrough, they chose to design a larger battery, because this can drive more weapons and the endurance of the mecha is also greatly guaranteed. This idea is good, and the performance of the mecha has obviously improved, but the problem is that they have made the problem too detailed and only look at the problem from their own professional perspective. The War Dragon mecha passed the military acceptance test perfectly, and every test data was extremely excellent, but when it was sent to the battlefield, it was just a special forces exercise. And a problem they didn't expect arose, because mechas often have engine overload conditions in different environments, especially under the dual effects of continuous engine overload and harsh surrounding environment. The battery eventually exploded. The students in the field showed surprised expressions, and were very surprised at this result they had never known. The explosion of the battery paralyzed the mech and even endangered the safety of the soldiers. Even if the battery did not explode, the mech's emergency maneuvers and sharp turns under several overload conditions also caused problems. The huge battery will get stuck in the spine of the mech's waist when the mech moves violently, and at the same time, because it occupies more space in the waist and abdomen, the balance between many core components is disrupted. Not only that, there is an even more terrible situation. When the battery pops out, it will get stuck because of its huge size and cannot pop out. The mech will not be able to replace the energy. Then think about it, students. If the battery of the mech cannot pop out, then even if you have a new battery in your hand, can you put it in? The field fell into silence, and many people lowered their heads and thought silently, taking notes. Afterwards, the R&D team made many adjustments to the battery, including the method that the male students just mentioned. Yan Shenfu said calmly, and then pointed to the boy with the glasses just now. For the heat dissipation problem, they chose to solve it through physical and chemical cooling, adding air intakes and adding coolant. However, this method will change the design and load-bearing capacity of the mecha, and the drawings need to be comprehensively designed. Whether it can be applied is still a question. There is also the problem of getting stuck. They chose to reduce the size of the battery, but in that case, wouldn't it go against the original intention, and won't this approach reduce all the performance of the mecha? This excellent mecha will become a second-rate mecha and will soon withdraw from all major military markets. Yan Shenfu said this, picked up the water next to him and took a sip. The students in the field looked at Yan Shenfu intently, even controlling their breathing. After our in-depth study of this case, we found that its problem actually appeared at the very beginning. At the beginning of the design, no one thought about jumping out of the entire framework. but just thought about optimizing this framework? But do you think that with the development of mechas over the past hundreds of years, how else can you optimize this framework? In short, no matter how much a steam engine installed on a car is improved, can it be compared with an internal combustion engine? This is a breakthrough in thinking. Since the battery has this problem, why must we choose to build in the battery instead of attaching it externally? Yan Shenfu's words were very powerful, and the people present were also shocked. Yes, the reason is so simple, but why didn't I think about it just now? Speaking of this, Yan Shenfu changed the subject. Although we have talked about this aspect of design thinking, which is also the main point of our class, I think we should still set a basic benchmark in your hearts. What I want you to remember is that the battery of the mecha, as Yang Mu just said, is the top priority and the real heart of the mecha. Whether the battery can operate normally and whether it can operate continuously and well determines everything about this mecha. Power is the source of everything. Yan Shenfu's resounding words made everyone in the field suddenly enlightened, and the expressions on their faces were very wonderful. Teacher Yan. At this time, a hand was raised. Yang Mu looked over and saw that it was the big wave of blonde hair just now. Yan Shenfu gestured to the other party to speak, and the big wave stood up. Teacher Yan, since you also agree with the idea of installing the battery on the back of the mecha, does that mean that this technology has begun to be applied? Or, Teacher Yan, you have already developed this technology and it has matured? The crisp voice of the big wave rang out, and the other students in the field were stunned for a moment, and then their eyes suddenly burst into light. This is simply a sharp point. If PAJR has really developed this technology, or has already started to apply it, and if Yan Shenfu is willing to explain it. Yang Mu turned his head to look at the hopeful expressions of those people in the field, especially the excited expressions on the faces of those selected students, and shook his head. This technology is a major change to the battery design that has been used for many years. The balance of circuits and materials alone must have cost countless manpower and material resources. This technology must be confidential at present, and Yan Shenfu will never teach it like this. After all, only elite mechas like his can be equipped until 20 years later. Yan Shenfu took a deep look at the selected student, a smile appeared on his face, and he seemed very proud to say, I will generously admit that after our efforts, we have indeed conquered this technology, but, you want to learn? The students in the field showed a surprised expression on their faces. No way. Although Yan Shenfu said this, Yang Mu saw Yan Shenfu's eyes staring at him. That look seemed to have something else. Chapter 94 Familiar People. Yan Shenfu's class was very in-depth. As an old man who has studied mecha research and development for decades, Yan Shenfu has experienced many things that others have never had in the long years of scientific research, and has accumulated extremely rich knowledge. So he can turn every little thing into the most detailed knowledge points, and then extend it to a higher level, which can give you a brand new understanding of mecha design. This may be the ability of the master, the powerful courage of the top scientists, who can give you more things while denying many things, so that you can have a new improvement in your worldview. But Yan Shenfu also has reservations. In the theoretical class this morning, several people deliberately guided Yan Shenfu's topic, hoping to know some confidential technology, but they were resolved by Yan Shenfu again and again, but he was not angry, but smiled and avoided the topic, and then continued to talk about the next knowledge point. For these elites among the elites, what Yan Shenfu taught is already very manly. Many of them would probably take many years to solve if they were to study them themselves, but here it allows people to avoid many detours. However, Yan Shenfu is only a guide, and the rest of the hardships and pains on the road still needed to be overcome by themselves. During the whole course, Yang Mu also found something different, that is, every time Yan Shenfu directly or cleverly avoided some sensitive questions, he would give Yang Mu a look. After seeing that look several times, Yang Mu felt that Yan Shenfu meant, want to learn? I will teach you. But Yang Mu could only pretend to be stupid and be a diligent and good baby. Fortunately, he was only called up by Yan Shenfu to answer that question at the beginning of the morning, and then he didn't ask Yang Mu to answer other questions. This also made Yang Mu feel relieved. When he entered this school, Yan Shenfu expressed his close relationship with him in front of several of his friends, and then yesterday's infirmary incident. At this moment, it is estimated that many people are speculating about the relationship between him and Yan Shenfu. Yang Mu did not want to become the focus of others at the beginning, which would only bring him a lot of unnecessary trouble. Keep a low profile and take it step by step, so that he would not be a tree in the forest. After the morning class, Yang Mu didn't even eat, and went to another place. Ma Wenjin was already waiting for Yang Mu in the research room below the college. After changing into the white clothes, Yang Mu walked out of the locker room. Ma Wenjin and several researchers were already standing next to a nutrient tank, each holding a display panel in their hands, looking at Yang Mu with burning eyes. Yang Mu was a little scared when a group of men looked at him like this, but Yang Mu still pretended to be calm and walked forward. Yang Mu, let me tell you about today's experimental process first, Ma Wenjin said, and then dragged on the panel. A super small square rose, and then projected a blue screen in front of Yang Mu. Today's plan is this. The last experiment was to inject nutrient solution every 10 hours. Considering your special situation, it will be changed to 9 hours now, a total of 3 injections, and the interval between each injection will be reduced by 1 hour. Ma Wenjin turned his head and looked at Yang Mu, asking for his opinion. Yang Mu carefully read the content on the screen and then asked, Director Ma, these things won't cause any damage to my body, right? Such a large dose of medicine. Ma Wenjin seemed to have expected Yang Mu to ask this question. He turned sideways and pointed to a tube next to nutrient tank. We have also considered this, so this tube stores neutralizers. If the display shows abnormal conditions, then this tube will be inserted into your body to quickly dilute the nutrient solution and enhancers in your body. Looking at the silver liquid in the jar, Yang Mu looked up at Ma Wenjin again, then nodded in agreement. After taking off all his clothes, Yang Mu lay down in the nutrient tank under the gaze of a group of men who looked at him like a treasure, put on an oxygen mask, and covered the glass cover of the nutrient tank. The blue liquid slowly rose from his feet until it filled the entire tank. A drowsy feeling came over him, and Yang Mu fell into deep sleep. When Yang Mu woke up again, Ma Wenjin and his group were sitting around the nutrient tank where Yang Mu was lying. Their eyes were bloodshot, but they were staring at Yang Mu in the nutrient tank. The liquid in the tank slowly dissipated. Yang Mu sat up by himself, shook his right hand a few times, and felt that his right hand seemed to be completely healed, and his body felt stronger. What time is it now? Yang Mu stood up, quickly put on the clothes next to him, and then turned his head to ask the researchers sitting around him. The expressions on their faces were a little dull, and they were all stunned, not answering Yang Mu's questions. Before Yang Mu felt confused, Yang Mu suddenly felt an urge to urinate. His bladder seemed to be about to explode at this moment, and Yang Mu rushed barefoot to the locker room not far away, where there was a toilet. The slamming sound of the door brought Ma Wenjin and others back to their senses. Xiaoli, who was sitting next to Ma Wenjin, looked at the empty nutrient tank, swallowed unconsciously, and then turned his head to look at Ma Wenjin next to him. Just now, they were simply experiencing the 9th miracle of mankind. From the beginning of the experiment at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to now, at 4 o'clock in the morning, 14 hours, they have filled Yang Mu's nutrient tank with nutrient solution 6 times. The first and second times were separated by 6 hours, then 3 hours, 2 hours, 1 hour, half an hour, and 15 minutes. This experimental progress was completely contrary to the original plan. However, the plan could not keep up with the changes. Yang Mu's body was like a bottomless pit. Every time the nutrient solution and enhancer were added to the nutrient tank, the other party could always absorb all of these things in about 10 minutes. After seeing this situation, Director Ma took a risk to speed up the progress of the experiment. He urged the researchers to add nutrient solution and enhancer several times, and the time interval was shortened again and again. Until the 6th time, everyone was deeply shocked when they saw that it was still quickly absorbed. If Xiaoli and several researchers had not pulled Ma Wenjin would have taken a scalpel and sliced Yang Mu on the spot. Although a tube of blood was drawn in the end, this state of subverting the 3 views made Xiaoli and others not know what professional knowledge to use to explain it. Director Ma, look at this. Xiaoli asked tentatively, but Ma Wenjin had no expression on his face, his eyes were scattered, and he seemed to be thinking about something. Xiaoli waved his hand in front of Ma Wenjin, and Ma Wenjin suddenly spoke. No one is allowed to tell this matter. All the data will be encrypted and uploaded to the database, and the rest will be destroyed. Ma Wenjin turned his head and looked at the group of researchers he brought with him, and said sternly. Seeing that everyone nodded heavily, Ma Wenjin's face was relieved and he let them do their own things. At this time, Yang Mu finally let go of himself and walked out of the locker room with a relaxed look. Director Ma, how is the situation? Yang Mu raised his head and asked curiously. Mao Engine showed a helpless smile on his face, waved his hand, shook his head, and said, "It's still the same as last time, but this time the data is more detailed. We still need to analyze it." Yang Mu nodded, although he was curious about why the experiment that was supposed to last a whole day was completed in just a dozen hours. But then he thought that his physique might be very special, so Yang Mu didn't ask any more questions, just said hello and went out. Because he felt that his right hand seemed to have completely recovered, during the morning exercise, Yang Mu applied to the instructor and rejoined the team to continue the normal training. Long Lai also nodded in agreement. After everyone was surprised that Yang Mu had healed his wound within 2 days, they all started the morning training. At the end of the morning training, Yang Mu and the students walked towards the cafeteria together. When passing the square, Yang Mu noticed something different. "Teacher, I have to come and bother you for a few days." "It's okay, the teacher has been waiting for you to come and teach a few courses. Let's go and say hello to the other teachers first." A young man sitting in a wheelchair in the square was talking with a man with a gentle temperament. At this time, 2 instructors walked past Yang Mu, and the conversation aroused Yang Mu's interest. "Hey, who is this? Why is he so close to teacher Su Xiaoqing, Su Yuanming, don't you know? He is a visiting professor here at a young age." Chapter 95 Inevitable Coincidence. Hearing the name Su Yuanming, Yang Mu was stunned for a moment. When he turned around to look at the boy sitting in the wheelchair, he was already walking in another direction with a teacher named Su Xiaoqing pushing the wheelchair. It was not that Yang Mu was suspicious, but hearing a familiar name here made Yang Mu feel unreal. Before coming to school, because Su Yuanming added Yang Mu as a friend, he sometimes chatted with him crazily, and once he happened to talk about this topic. At that time, Su Yuanming said that he knew there was a top military academy on Yanherong Star called Kunlu Academy. With Yang Mu's mecha fighting level, decisive fighting style and philosophy, he could go there to be a fighting coach. If he was not too old, he could even go there to study. And his family happened to have a recommendation indicator that was not used, so Su Yuanming also hinted that if Yang Mu could teach him a set of very useful practical skills, or a certain way of fighting, he could give this quota to Yang Mu. It was at that time that Yang Mu realized that the Su Yuanming he knew was not only a local tyrant, but also a powerful and super-local tyrant who lived on Yanherong Star. It was just that Yang Mu evaded the topic at that time, and Yang Mu did not tell the other party about the news that he was admitted to this college. After all, the two were just friends in the game. Although they had played a few games together, it was impossible for Yang Mu to tell everything about himself. Not only that, the two had never video chatted with each other. Yang Mu had at most spoken to each other in the game. So in reality, they should be considered as two people who did not know each other at all. It was just a coincidence that Yang Mu met a young man named Su Yuanming here. Yang Mu shook his head, thinking that what he had just said was just his own fantasy. The person in the wheelchair might not be the Su Yuanming he knew, or maybe the name was not Su Yuanming, but just a word with a similar meaning, and he just misheard it. And if that was the case, why would the other party be in a wheelchair? This idea popped up in Yang Mu's mind for some reason. However, Yang Mu finally did not dwell on this issue, because under the entanglement of Jimo and others, Yang Mu put aside this issue. After having breakfast in the cafeteria, he joined the training with the freshman team. I don't know if it was because of the last incident, the training courses for recruits were a little different today. There was only 1 hour of combat training. Each instructor instructed 10 people, and occasionally Long Lai would pick a few people to do a fighting demonstration. Of course, Long Lai won easily. After that, there were various physical training projects. Long Lai also participated in them, correcting some people's various movements from time to time. Yang Mu's basic skills were solid, so he was not criticized. However, the training in the morning was also very hard. At least after many high-intensity training subjects, everyone was sweating and panting. Especially the September sun was still scorching. After a few days, many people were much darker. And such training will become the norm for the next 3 months. When the group was dismissed in the morning, Long Lai suddenly announced that they would conduct a simulated operation of a mecha this afternoon, so the afternoon training mission was temporarily postponed. This really made the young men who had been tossed around for 3 or 4 days feel a little fortunate, and after hearing that they could touch a mecha, they were even more excited. Quinn, who was standing next to Yang Mu, smiled so hard that his face turned red, and excitedly punched Yang Mu's triceps on his left arm several times. Being able to control a mecha here, These people couldn't help but be excited. Mecha is the highest dream in every boy's heart. Imagine that someone who has played virtual mecha games for several years suddenly lets you control a real mecha, or a military mecha. How would you feel? If he hadn't been reborn, Yang Mu would probably laugh as happily as these freshmen, and even want to yell a few times, but first, Yang Mu was used to it, so he just smiled with his lips pursed. After lunch, Yang Mu did not go back to the dormitory directly, but prepared to go to the medical room to check the injury. Jijin and others wanted to come together, but were stopped by Yang Mu. He walked towards the medical room alone. When he arrived at the medical room, although it was noon, it seemed very lively inside. From time to time, some people laughed, and several nurses laughed all the time. Yang Mu walked in. A doctor sitting outside immediately saw Yang Mu and stood up. Yang Mu was about to tell his purpose, but he caught a glimpse of a boy next to the nurse's desk in the center of the medical room. The boy was the boy in the wheelchair that Yang Mu met in the small square. The two looked at each other, and Yang Mu just glanced at him quickly, then looked away and talked to the doctor next to him. The wheelchair boy was not very handsome, but his facial features were very regular, very handsome, and seemed to be very talkative. People around him were talking to him. Although Yang Mu went for the examination under the guidance of the doctor, the boy in the wheelchair was always paying attention to Yang Mu. After Yang Mu left, he asked the nurses next to him about Yang Mu from time to time. "You are fine now. The muscle tissue has fully recovered. However, you should not do strenuous exercise on your right hand recently, especially stretching. The muscles may still be relatively tender and cannot withstand such strenuous exercise for the time being." The doctor gave Yang Mu this answer after a detailed examination. Yang Mu also smiled and nodded, thanked the doctor, and was about to turn around and go back to the dormitory, but he ran into the boy in the wheelchair at the door of the medical room. Yang Mu bumped into him face to face, and then their eyes met again. Yang Mu pursed his lips and nodded politely, looked away, and then walked past, and at this time, the boy's voice came from behind. "Your name is Yang Mu, right?" The other party's words made Yang Mu's steps pause, but he did not stop. But the next moment, the other party said another word. "We played TRM together, right?" Hearing this, Yang Mu was stunned for a moment, stopped, and stood at the door of the medical room. After a moment, Yang Mu sighed and turned around. The boy sitting in the wheelchair still had a gentle smile on his face. A group of nurses and doctors stood inside the medical room and looked at this place secretly, but no one came over, leaving a large area for the two. "Let's get to know each other again." The boy stretched out his right hand, raised his head and looked at Yang Mu with a smile. "My name is Su Yuanming, Su of the Breeze, Yuan of the Abyss, and Ming of Tomorrow. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96 Conversation. Seeing the smile on Su Yuanming's face, Yang Mu looked down at the hand he had extended to him, took a deep breath, forced a smile on his face, and also extended his right hand. Yang Mu simply answered the other party, but Su Yuanming's expression was quite excited, holding Yang Mu's hand and unwilling to let go. "Annihilation is your account." Su Yuanming glanced elsewhere, and then immediately moved his eyes back to Yang Mu's face, asking somewhat tentatively. Yang Mu did not answer, which was considered as tacit agreement. "I didn't expect to meet you here, and you got into Kunlun College by yourself. I wanted to give you a recommendation indicator at the beginning." Su Yuanming's face was already a little excited. He clenched his fists and lightly hit his legs, looking at Yang Mu with some emotion. "I didn't expect you to be so young. Your future is limitless." Su Yuanming looked into Yang Mu's eyes again, but saw that the other party's eyes were fixed on his feet on his wheelchair. Su Yuanming pursed his lips, lowered his head, and said, "What? Are you surprised that I'm sitting in a wheelchair?" Yang Mu stood in front of Su Yuanming. His eyes scanned Su Yuanming's legs several times, then nodded, stretched out his hand and pointed at Su Yuanming's feet. "What is wrong?" Yang Mu could now confirm that the boy in front of him was the local tyrant named Su Yuanming whom he met in the game, and he was still a teenager of about 15 or 16 years old. But in this era of advanced medical technology, the other party was still sitting in a wheelchair, and had a disabled body at such a young age. Yang Mu felt sorry and wanted to know what the other party had experienced. However, Yang Mu was originally thinking about whether to ask this question out loud, whether it would hurt the other party, but he didn't expect that the other party would ask the question he wanted to know. Su Yuanming raised his head and smiled with relief, stretched out his hand and scratched his head, as if he didn't shy away from his own defects at all, and his face was still relaxed. I had an accident when I was a child. My spine below the chest was broken. The injury was too complicated. No doctor dared to perform surgery, so I became paralyzed. Su Yuanming said this very lightly, as if he was just describing a trivial matter. Yang Mu frowned when he heard it. From what he said, this was not a congenital defect, but a regret caused by acquired factors. Moreover, he probably spent a long time in a wheelchair, and it might even continue for a long time in the future. Such years should be very difficult for a teenager. And he still looks so cheerful, and he seems to be a strong person. Yang Mu respects such people. Thinking of this, the serious expression on Yang Mu's face also eased. Su Yuanming seemed to have sensed the change in Yang Mu's aura. He kept smiling and pointed to the tree-lined road next to him. Walk for a walk, it seemed to be a suggestion, but it seemed to be accompanied by a strong desire. Yang Mu nodded, walked behind Su Yuanming, and prepared to push the wheelchair. No, it's electric, I can control it. Su Yuanming saw Yang Mu's action and said hurriedly, but Yang Mu shook his head, put his hands on the two handles on the wheelchair, and pushed Su Yuanming towards the tree-lined avenue not far away. I'm still very curious about your mecha operation ability. You just said that these things are just what you figured out in your spare time. Yang Mu pushed Su Yuanming for a while on the tree-lined avenue. The two talked occasionally, and finally Su Yuanming still expressed his doubts. Yang Mu just said and didn't seem to be stumped by the question, but didn't want to say anything more. But at this time, Yang Mu thought of a question and said to Su Yuanming, what about you? Why did you come to Kunlun College? And it seems that you are very familiar with the people here. Although he learned from the instructor in the morning that the other party came to the school as a visiting professor, Yang Mu really couldn't figure out what kind of things such a 15 or 16-year-old boy could teach here, so Yang Mu asked the question in his heart. Well, you'll know this afternoon. Su Yuanming kept it a secret at this time and said with a smile. At this time, Su Yuanming supported the sides of the wheelchair with both hands, turned around, looked up at Yang Mu and said, the people here are all top elites. Your future is definitely limitless. You can find me if you need anything in the future. This was the second time Su Yuanming said this in a short period of time, but Yang Mu did not answer, just pushed him forward. Su Yuanming was not embarrassed by this situation at all, but said to Yang Mu with interest. Hey, we are really friends from now on, right? Yang Mu looked into his eyes and nodded. Seeing that Yang Mu agreed, Su Yuanming's face suddenly showed an extremely excited expression, and he said to himself excitedly. Great! Tomorrow, Jieha and Duolan will be extremely surprised when they know this news. Yang Mu's footsteps suddenly stopped, and he looked at Su Yuanming in surprise, and asked in disbelief, No, you, when did you become friends with him? After talking with Su Yuanming for more than 10 minutes, before Yang Mu said to leave, Su Yuanming urged Yang Mu to go back and have a good lunch break, because he said that this afternoon would be a very tiring afternoon, and he must get enough rest. Yang Mu didn't quite understand what the other party meant, but he completely accepted the other party's suggestion that he should go back and have a good rest, so the two separated at the end of the boulevard, and Yang Mu went back to rest for the afternoon mecha simulation operation. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 80 people from the freshman department, led by Long Lai, set out from the dormitory, passed through the teaching building and the training ground, and came to the foot of several mountains where the college was preparing for the exam. Seeing a camouflage alloy door slowly open at the foot of the mountain in front of them, all the students exclaimed, and then walked in with admiration. After walking through a short tunnel, the view in front of everyone suddenly became clear. Everyone looked up and exclaimed again. Because here, the interior of the entire mountain seemed to be completely hollowed out. In the huge space inside, countless mechas of various models were placed layer by layer on the inside of the mountain. Many staff members were walking around in it. An officer came forward to report the preparations to Long Lai, and then Long Lai led a group of freshmen with open mouths and eyes, almost dazed expressions, into the center of the mountain. Yang Mu was also shocked at this moment when he looked around and found that none of the mechas he saw were the same. From ancient times to the present, Yang Mu even saw many mecha models currently in service in many countries. It is completely okay to call this place a mecha museum. And being able to get all these things is enough to show the strong national strength of PAJR. As the team slowly walked into the center of the mountain, Yang Mu met Su Yuanming again on the flat ground. But at this moment, he was standing, with that warm smile still on his face. Chapter 97 Advanced Results. Yang Mu was indeed not mistaken. Su Yuanming was indeed standing now, but he was standing only with the help of related machinery. Behind him, a set of exoskeletons from head to toe supported Su Yuanming's body. Now, he was standing in the center of the square in the entire mountain. Next to him, the elegant teacher Su Shaoqing also appeared in the center. Behind him were another team of students, the students of the first period. Long Lai also walked forward. Su Yuanming and Long Lai seemed to know each other. The two greeted each other familiarly, and then Su Yuanming said something in Long Lai's ear. At this time, Su Yuanming walked over, and the whole movement of his body was just like that of an ordinary person. If it weren't for the clanging sound of the metal exoskeleton tripod knocking on the ground, there would be no sign of any abnormality in Su Yuanming's body. The two talked for a while, and Su Yuanming glanced at him, and then said something next to Long Lai. Long Lai also turned his head to look at Yang Mu, paused for a moment, and then nodded. All these actions were naturally in Yang Mu's sight, but Yang Mu could not do anything but stand still and wait for Long Lai and others to make further moves. Hey, Yang Mu, who is that guy on the stage? He looks very young. Quinn, who was standing next to Yang Mu, turned his head and asked. Yang Mu glanced at him and shook his head. Hey Quinn, don't you know? That boy is a visiting professor of the college. Didn't two instructors say so in the morning? Jimo, who was standing behind Quinn, came out and interrupted at this time. Yang Mu turned his head and glanced at Jimo, who still had two big braids. He didn't say anything, but his eyes swept over Quinn and Jijin, who was not far away. Ah, so powerful. Quinn pouted, a little surprised, but suddenly realized something else. Wait a minute, Jimo, why am I called Heikui? Did Yuan Miao say so? Yuan Miao, who was standing in the distance, gave him a sharp look. Yang Mu did not join in their little fights, but looked back to the front. Long Lai had just finished talking with Su Yuanming and was walking to the front of the team again. Today afternoon, we will conduct a mecha simulation operation. This experiment will be guided by teacher Su Yuanming. You must listen carefully. Do you hear me? I heard it. The loud response sounded in the square, and the staff passing by turned their heads to take a look. Seeing that Long Lai had already given himself and the students present a shot of prevention, Su Yuanming walked forward with a warm smile on his face. Hello, students. My name is Su Yuanming, and I am the instructor of today's simulation operation class. Su Yuanming said this, and although the students on the field were obviously a little surprised, they did not show any strange expressions under Long Lai's pressure. I know everyone thinks that I am younger than you. How can I teach you anything? Su Yuanming seemed to see the things behind the expressions of the people on the field, and still spoke in a calm tone. But, you will have a different understanding of me later. No matter whether you accept me or not, please cherish what I bring to you, Su Yuanming said directly, and then Su Shaoqing stepped forward and unfolded a strange-looking, very thin exoskeleton. The first-term people standing next to them seemed to recognize what it was, whispering to each other, with some excitement on their faces. Everyone's eyes were immediately attracted by this thing, and Yang Mu also carefully scanned the exoskeleton. This is an exoskeleton developed by me. It is different from the conventional exoskeleton style, and the purpose of this exoskeleton is completely different. When Su Yuanming unfolded the exoskeleton, his temperament changed completely, becoming very rigorous and serious, making the people in the field unconsciously infected by the aura he brought. The students of the first term should have listened to my course in March and know what this is, but the students of the second term have not seen it yet, so I will explain it briefly. Everyone should know that the driving technology of mecha has undergone many changes, from the initial joystick to the button and then to the current somatosensory operation, but there is a better way to operate it. Do you know it? Su Yuanming asked. Neural connection technology. A boy in front of Yang Mu raised his hand and said. Su Yuanming looked over and nodded with a smile. Yang Mu listened to this and suddenly realized that this thing in front of him was neural connection technology. This idea popped out of Yang Mu's mind and he couldn't stop it. Yang Mu began to observe the exoskeleton carefully and then check its differences. Yes, to be precise, it is neural connection technology. Su Yuanming said with a smile. The whole person became very confident at this time, pointing to the exoskeleton next to him and said loudly, "You will feel the difference between neural connection and somatosensory operation in the subsequent simulation operation." At this point, Su Yuanming smiled and touched his nose. "In addition, I would like to say that the neural connection technology you see now, it was developed by me." When the people in the field heard the other party's words, they immediately exclaimed, because everyone knows that in contemporary mechas, somatosensory operation is a common control method. Countries have been working on developing neural connection technology to improve the control sensitivity of mecha pilots to mechas, so as to exert higher combat effectiveness of mechas. However, no one expected that someone here has already developed such technology and has begun to apply it. Not only that, the developer is not a white-haired old man, but a young boy who has just started his career. This will surely bring major changes to PAJR's mecha research and development work. Perhaps in the near future, PAJR's mecha technology will be ahead of all countries by an era. Everyone's eyes were shining, and some people even clenched their fists and stared at Su Yuanming, wanting to remember Su Yuanming's face deeply. Quinn was one of them. Looking at the changes in the expressions and atmosphere of the people in the field, Su Yuanming still smiled calmly, not at all embarrassed by the burning eyes of the people, but turned around. "You can see that I have put on such an exoskeleton. After many improvements, you don't have to worry about what kind of harm such an exoskeleton will bring to you. I can briefly introduce it here. The operation method of this exoskeleton is very simple. It collects brain signals and then transmits them through the spinal nerve optical cables. The electrical synapses at the connection points in various parts of the body will release weak currents, thereby stimulating the driver to make actions faster. At the same time, the mechanical spine of this exoskeleton will be connected to the control system of the entire mecha, so that when your action command is issued from the brain, your body will make the same action as the mecha's body, with an error of no more than 0.1 seconds. Those in the first period and those who really know the business in the field immediately exclaimed, and the others were a little confused. At this time, a boy in the first period raised his hand and asked with eager eyes, "Teacher Su, then may I ask if we can all wear this mecha later?" When the question was asked, everyone in the field had a fiery look in their eyes, and they were eager to try it out, but Su Yuanming shook his head. "No, it can't," Su Yuanming said, and then pointed to the mechas that were being arranged around. "Today will be a group experiment. The 80 mechas of the freshmen will be operated using the neural connection system, and you first-term students will still use the traditional somatosensory operation to drive the mechas. The two groups will be divided into two teams and confront each other. We will test the situation when freshmen who have not received orthodox military mecha training use mechas with neural connection technology. Can it pose a fatal threat to you students who have participated in real combat and use somatosensory suits?" As soon as Su Yuanming said this, there was an uproar in the field. Some people were disappointed, and some were excited. Su Yuanming stretched out his hand to ask everyone to be quiet, scanned the people in the field, and then smiled and said, "Let's get started without further ado. But a friendly reminder, there are mecha masters among the freshmen, everyone should be fully prepared." Su Yuanming said this, and his eyes unconsciously looked at Yang Mu and the team. Chapter 98. The experiment begins. Group A begins the neural connection test. Group B is ready to enter the cabin. The mecha simulation operating system is running normally. All mecha suspension systems are running normally. All mecha data collection systems are running normally. In the large venue, the staff wearing silver-white jumpsuits are reporting the situation to Su Shaoqing, who is standing in the middle of the venue. At the same time, hundreds of square support frames are hanging mechas of different models on the venue, and all data are collected by the collectors next to them. The wide venue in the belly of the mountain has now become a huge simulation laboratory, where students can use the most realistic mechas for simulation exercises. Long Lai was also standing next to Su Shaoqing at this time, but he looked at the busy scene in the field and asked a question. Has the experiment made a breakthrough? Although Long Lai didn't look at Long Lai, he was obviously asking Su Shaoqing. But Su Shaoqing didn't hide anything. While issuing instructions in the headset, he processed the information on the 8 separate blue small screens in front of him. On it, the status of some drivers was displayed at the moment. Su Shaoqing stretched out his slender fingers from time to time, integrating a lot of information and turning it into orders. "Well, the military has issued an ultimatum," Su Shaoqing answered calmly, his eyes fixed on him. His face with glasses was serious and he was arranging the whole experiment in an orderly manner. Long Lai turned his head, looked at Su Shaoqing, frowned, and expressed his doubts. This kind of confidential experiment can be carried out in the national laboratory. Why bring it here for testing? Don't forget, there are many external students here. Even if the first batch can't use these mechas with neural connection technology, do you really think that those freshmen are all idiots who know nothing? Long Lai looked at Su Shaoqing, his tone full of confusion. Su Shaoqing did not answer Long Lai's question immediately, but carried out each step of the experiment seriously. Only after the main work was arranged, Su Shaoqing turned his head and looked at Long Lai. The situation in the Sonai Star region is very serious at present. Su Shaoqing just said this calmly, but Long Lai's pupils shrank suddenly. Others may not know what this sentence means, but Long Lai fully understands the bloody storm behind this sentence. The Sonai Star region is a narrow star region at the end of the spiral arm of the Milky Way. A long time ago, it was detected by human probes and was a desolate and dead area. Originally, countries did not pay much attention to that barren and remote narrow area. Until 70 years ago, a private expedition team discovered extremely rich mineral reserves in the star-shattering belt there. Various rare metal substances have abundant reserves there, and the purity is very high. At the same time, in just 1 year, more than a dozen metal varieties that humans have never discovered were discovered there, many of which have extremely superior chemical and physical properties, becoming essential metals for various cutting-edge fields and high-end weapons. Countless mining companies flocked to this treasure land to mine minerals. The Sonai Star region was once called the Kingdom of God, because there were too many magical metals there, as if God had deliberately hidden all these things there. Humankind's endless greed also broke out at this time. Several large companies joined forces to quickly tear apart the exploration company that wanted to swallow up the entire star region, and extended their tentacles to various parts of the Sonai Star region. At this time, the surrounding small countries began to intervene. After several small interstellar wars broke out, the three superpowers began to intervene, began to support puppets, and embezzled mineral deposits. The struggle between local forces finally escalated to a contest between major powers, and the war there was endless. In recent years, PAJR's mining there has been repeatedly blocked by various countries, and several agents supported by it have died accidentally one after another. PAJR urgently needs to show its muscles at this time. Without destroying the current relationship, the easiest way to consolidate PAJR's power there is to demonstrate its own technology. Thinking of all this, Long Lai sighed and looked at the mecha group in the distance that had begun to close the hatch, end the inspection, and prepare for the test. So the neural connection technology is this muscle, right? Su Shaoqing seemed to have noticed Long Lai's situation, and he patted Long Lai's broad shoulders. He also understood that Long Lai's psi contained too many things, but he still said confidently, "Don't worry, the military asked us to put this technology into use as soon as possible, not only to produce a deterrent effect, but also to reduce our casualties." At this point, Su Shaoqing seemed to have thought of something, gave Long Lai a look, and pointed to a gray mecha there. And this plan was proposed by Xiaoming himself. Su Shaoqing's light words revealed an even more shocking fact. Click, the holographic helmet was locked in the slot on the combat uniform. Yang Yu grinned, twisted his shoulders unconsciously, and closed his eyes to feel the abrupt feeling behind him. The cockpit of this mecha has been slightly revised. Perhaps to fit the neural connection technology, many buttons and brakes have been removed from the simplified cockpit. Instead, there is a metal boom hanging from the top of the cockpit, with a ring buckle extending from it to protect his waist. At the same time, the combat suit on his body has also been changed. A mechanical spine has been installed on the spine and sewn together with the combat suit. The electrical synaptic ports on it are all tightly fitted on Yang Mu's back, and this thing is all over his body. In the dress test just now, Yang Mu felt a weak electric current passing through his body, bringing a slight numbness. But at the same time Yang Mu could feel that he was more comfortable with the operation of the mecha. Of course, this is only relative to the somatosensory operation. The somatosensory operation is actually very similar to the current situation, but the somatosensory operation is to passively receive and transmit body signals, through the rapid capture of the driver's movements, and then transmit them to the mecha through system integration. This kind of work causes a certain time difference between the actions of people and mechas, which is almost 1 second. But now I don't feel the same way. The neural connection technology will actively feed back my actions to the mecha. At this moment, the mecha is like my clothes, and it will immediately make the same movements as my movements. I didn't expect Su Yuanming to be able to develop such a technology. It's really amazing. Yang Mu admired it in his heart. Yang Mu thought so, but he still felt that such technology was too rough. At least the operating system after his annihilation mutation has always made Yang Mu very fascinated. The green line under the skin should also be a kind of neural connection system, but it is obviously more sophisticated. And I seem to have a drawing of that technology in my mind. Shaking my head and opening my eyes, Yang Mu quickly put this idea aside. If I take out this drawing now, I'm afraid my life will be in danger. Even if I give it to Su Yuanming, it must not be now, and it must not be given so directly. It's better to do it step by step. These things will slowly appear in reality. At this moment, the screen on the helmet suddenly went black, and then a game interface popped up. Yang Mu clicked on the interface above, then put his hands and feet into the combat card slot, waiting for the next simulation operation. This is a virtual operation game developed by the military, with a very high degree of simulation. Yang Mu does not need to log in with an account, nor does he need to choose a mecha after entering, because when the screen flashes again, a hilly terrain appears in front of Yang Mu, and he is driving the improved version of the War Dragon mecha that he drives in reality. This mecha that was retired due to battery problems was not actually what Yang Mu wanted to choose, but the staff brought him to this mecha, and Yang Mu could only accept it. After all, it is an improved version of the War Dragon, so there should be some optimization. Yang Mu thought so, and suddenly a very noisy sound came from the channel in the helmet. Yang Mu was hit by the noise and his whole brain was buzzing, and he quickly cut off the public channel. These freshmen have great interest in the mechas they are using and this advanced operation method in technology, and they are shouting excitedly in the channel one by one. Yang Mu was not in the mood to join in. He was just about to test the changes that the neural connection system would bring to the mecha, but at this time a small window popped up in the lower right corner of the holographic helmet, showing Su Yuanming's name. Yang Mu was stunned for a moment. He did not expect Su Yuanming to participate in this simulation operation, but Yang Mu still clicked to agree. The next second, Su Yuanming's voice suddenly came from the team channel. Yang Mu, just feel free to use all your moves. The neural connection system will definitely bring you more different feelings, Su Yuanming said loudly, as if he was asking Yang Mu for credit, assuring him how powerful his neural connection technology would be. Yang Mu responded, and at this time a window popped up again in the lower right corner, which was Ji Jin's invitation to form a team. Pull in a few friends, Yang Mu said this, and then agreed to the invitation. Chapter 99, Triple Layer Tactics. Yang Mu, follow your sister Mo later, Sister Mo will take you flying. As soon as she entered the channel, Ji Mo said loudly to Yang Mu, with a somewhat excited tone. Since she had been in contact with Yang Mu for the past few days, this originally quiet girl seemed to have exposed her personality all of a sudden, and she spoke even more fiercely than the short-haired girl Yuan Miao. In the same channel, Quinn was also howling loudly, constantly shouting about how to come out on top today. Is this Teacher Su? At this moment, Ji Jin said in surprise. The voices of everyone in the team channel suddenly stopped, and then one by one exclaimed. Wow, Teacher Su, you are so powerful. Do you want to play with us? Jimo asked in disbelief. Teacher Su is so handsome, can you give me an autograph later? Yuan Miao also said jokingly. Ahem, you are being impolite. There is an old saying that goes, respect your teacher. You are doing this, Quinn interrupted at this time, criticizing the words of Jimo and Yuan Miao. Please shut up, but it seems that what he got was complete suppression. Seeing that Ji Jin and the others did not seem to have any objection to Su Yuanming joining the team, Yang Mu was relieved. He had just pulled Su Yuanming into the team channel on his own initiative. Now everyone was not alienated. This was the best. However, Yang Mu still wanted to bring everyone into the atmosphere. Just as he was about to speak, Su Yuanming spoke first. Hello everyone, my name is Su Yuanming. I am younger than you. You have to protect me. By the way, Yang Mu and I are old friends, Su Yuanming said in the channel. His tone was very light, without the teacher's airs at all, and this was what Jimo and Yuan Miao wanted the most. Jimo immediately said loudly in the channel. It's okay. With my sister Mo protecting you, they dare not act rashly, eh? So you and Yang Mu have known each other for a long time. Yang Mu, tell me how you met Teacher Su. Seeing Su Yuanming quickly blend in with everyone, Yang Mu also smiled knowingly, briefly explained how he and Su Yuanming became friends, and then controlled the mecha to move forward. At this time, Ji Jin said something in the channel, and everyone gradually stopped talking and joking, and began to take this simulation training seriously. This simulation task is not to let the old students of the first period and the new students of the second period operate the mecha to fight, but to require all students to complete a joint task set by the system, attacking the fortress. This is a fortress castle built in a hilly area under the system setting. The terrain castles on both sides of the fortress have the same firepower settings and the same attack mechanism. Both sides will attack from both sides, and whichever side gets the flag at the top of the fortress first will be the winner. The weapons and equipment of the mechas driven by the students are the same: 2 shoulder-mounted machine guns, a handheld kinetic rifle, and 6 missiles on the weapon rack. Therefore, there are actually only 3 variables. One is the model of the mecha driven, the second is the individual's mecha driving level, and the third is the different mecha operating systems in the 2 teams. After Yang Mu and others became familiar with the operation of the neural connection, they slowly gathered together. At this time, many students in the field also gathered together to operate the mechas, forming small teams and began to discuss countermeasures with each other. On the other side, the first batch of students also had a similar scene. Outside the real field, Long Lai found a chair at this time, crossed his legs and sat in the center of the field, looking carefully at a large floating screen in front of him, while Su Shaoqing stood beside him, and the 8 screens in front of him were jumping with relevant data and pictures from time to time. There are no staff members walking around in the entire field now. All the mechas in the cube frame move their entire bodies with the help of the suspension system, and the surrounding data collectors are continuously transmitting various data of these mechas to a control room in the distance. What do you think? Ji Jin asked in the team channel, waiting to hear everyone's suggestions. Brother, why don't you just make up your mind? I'll listen to you anyway, Jimo said in the channel at this time, but Ji Jin scolded him harshly, asking Jimo to think about it himself. Su Yuanming said that they should just attack directly according to the system's instructions, and the opinions of others were similar. Ji Jin said that they should form small teams to attack, but Yang Mu thought about it carefully and then put forward an opinion. I think we can use the characteristics of the neural connection system to make some adjustments to the offensive action. Adjust? Adjust what? Su Yuanming asked at this time, and Ji Jin also expressed his desire to hear Yang Mu's ideas. Yang Mu organized his words a little and expressed his thoughts just now. My idea is that although we are now divided into small groups, the attack of the small group should not be the best method of action for this operation. My opinion is to use the threefold tactics to attack. Threefold tactics? What is this? Yuan Miao was a little confused at this time and asked in the channel. The 3-layer attack Yang Mu mentioned is literally what it means. The mecha troops are divided into 3 echelons, and there are gaps in the attack of each echelon. This can ensure that the combat effectiveness continues, but the firepower should be reduced. Quinn relied on his erudite mind to immediately explain Yang Mu's tactics. Yang Mu nodded, but still added. Although this method will reduce firepower, we can completely achieve accurate operation of mechas and accurate strikes on fortress targets through neural connection technology, which will greatly increase the efficiency of firepower, and at this time the density of mechas will decrease, casualties will decrease, and the possibility of success of the entire mission will be greatly enhanced. Ji Jin and others did not speak, but were secretly thinking about the method Yang Mu mentioned. The method Yang Mu originally thought of was that each mecha formed different teams and attacked in group cooperation, but many years of combat experience still made Yang Mu think more, and finally thought of this tactic. The changes brought by neural connection technology to himself and others are different. At least Yang Mu feels that his strength will be lighter and more accurate with the blessing of this technology than somatosensory operation. Such technology can make up for the shortcomings of everyone's lack of driving skills. But everyone's combat awareness is definitely not as sophisticated as the old students, so it is easier to operate with human wave tactics. Okay, let's use this. 2 voices sounded at the same time. It turned out that Ji Jin and Su Yuanming agreed to this method at the same time. Seeing this, everyone also agreed. Okay, I'll go to the public channel to talk to other teams and see what they think. Seeing that everyone agreed with this idea, Ji Jin switched the channel to negotiate in the public channel. Yang Mu, how did you come up with such a method? Su Yuanming said at this time with great admiration, his tone full of admiration. This is a tactic in the army. I saw it in a book before, and I suddenly thought of it just now. Yang Mu explained this, and everyone was not too surprised, just thinking that this was the result of Yang Mu reading more books. 10 minutes later, Ji Jin returned to the team channel and informed everyone that everyone agreed to this plan, and then each group would have someone in each echelon. There were 6 people in his group, and Yang Mu did not refuse. He volunteered to be the first echelon, and Ji Jin chose to go with Yang Mu. Jimo and Su Yuanming were in the second echelon, and Yuan Miao and Qin were in the third echelon. At this time, the various groups began to separate. 81 people took the initiative to line up in 3 rows under the hill, 1 kilometer away from the fortress, slowly approaching the direction of the fortress, preparing to launch an attack. At this time, on Su Shaoking's screen, the situation of the first and second batch students was completely different. The second batch of freshmen lined up in 3 rows, while the first batch of seniors formed teams of 3 or 4 people. Each team spread out and advanced towards the fortress area in an orderly manner with superb driving skills. Su Shaoking and Long Lai looked at the 2 teams with different movements on the screen. Long Lai nodded, but Su Shaoking smiled. Yang Mu was manipulating the War Dragon mech to move forward slowly and carefully. The advantage of the hilly area was that there was enough space for the mech to hide its body, and the low hills could also reduce the energy consumption of the mech while moving. Yang Mu was now less than 500 meters away from the nearest turret of the fortress. Yang Mu could already see the low barrel of a turret. Occasionally, 1 or 2 people reported their positions and situations on the public channel. Everyone was moving forward slowly, looking for the right time to start the battle. Suddenly, a huge explosion sounded, and a turret fragment flew in the direction of Yang Mu. The artillery fire on the side of the fortress facing away from Yang Mu and others began to operate, and the roaring sound came one after another. It seemed that the seniors of the first period had already begun to attack the fortress. Chapter 100, Scorching Battle. A huge turret fell beside the War Dragon mecha operated by Yang Mu, splashing countless flying rocks. The fallen turret fragments rolled on the ground, forcing Yang Mu to choose to dodge to the side. Bang! At this moment, a gunshot was heard about 10 meters away from Yang Mu. The muzzle of a rifle in the hands of a mecha was emitting wisps of smoke. Perhaps the weapon's safety bolt was opened before the attack, and the gun was accidentally fired when the fragments fell to the ground. The crisp sound of the gun spread, and the system on the fortress immediately automatically identified it. The turrets facing the second-term freshmen all started to start, and the low-hanging muzzles began to adjust their angles under the drive of the gears. Several detection radars on the fortress kept turning, and Yang Mu's mecha had already prompted the information detected by the radar. Launch the attack, Ji Jin shouted in the public channel. Before the attack began, Ji Jin, who had a 4th-level physique, undoubtedly became the captain of the first echelon. The mechas of the first echelon were still nearly 500 meters away from the fortress, but now they could no longer sneak closer. The first shot just now meant to speed up the action. Suddenly, many people shouted in the public channel. Missiles with tail flames flew out from the dense bushes from time to time, aiming directly at the fortress turrets in the distance. All the people in the first echelon came out from everywhere and directly controlled the mechas to rush towards the fortress. The situation now was different from before. Under the vision of the surveillance radar, the woods and hills used by the mechas to cover their bodies had lost their function. Facing the shells fired from the fortress, if they continued to stand there, they would be waiting to die. Instead of fleeing in embarrassment, it is better to move forward bravely. The task of the first echelon was simple, that is, to attract firepower, find out the specific firepower points, remove the related firepower, and lay a good foundation for subsequent firepower coverage. Yang Mu also made a judgment at the first time, and rushed towards the fortress in the distance with a mecha. 27 mechas of different colors and models appeared from the hills, firing missiles while dodging the flying shells, pulling the battle line and rushing towards the fortress. The whole battlefield was full of the roar of guns and cannons. The 2 batches of students on both sides of the fortress all launched attacks, but in terms of temporary results, the old students were obviously better. On the fortress facing the old students, several targeted firepower had been removed. The various organized teams were advancing steadily, working together and gradually disintegrating the firepower of the fortress. These colleges that had only learned mecha operation for 1 year already had superb combat skills, and everyone's performance was not inferior to the special mecha forces of various countries. The second echelon waits. Wait until the first echelon reaches 200 meters from the fortress before going up. In the public channel, Ji Jin was still issuing orders loudly, and the Dark Knight he was operating was also rushing forward. The second echelon had actually entered the radar detection range, but the firepower of the 27 mechas attracted the turret system to choose to attack these exposed mechas first. At the same time, in the square on the mountain in the real world, a spectacular scene was also being staged. The 71 mechas of Group B were all shaking at this moment. The pulleys linked by the hooks and locks of the mecha's suspension system kept moving the mechas. The surrounding data collectors were running at full capacity, uploading all the data of every action. The relevant basic data had already appeared on Su Yuanming's screen, and some casualties and fortress durability were also displayed. Long Lai was sitting upright at this moment, staring at the screen, observing the situation. This method of Group A is still too risky, Long Lai said this, and Su Shaoqing moved his eyes over and saw the tragic battle of the 27 mechas of the first echelon of Group A from the perspective of God on the screen. A large caliber shell exploded 2 meters away from Yang Mu. The huge airwave caused by the shell made the high-speed movement of the War Dragon mech unstable. The entire mech was thrown out and fell to the ground. Yang Mu manipulated the mech to roll on the ground deftly and stood up again. At this time, the holographic helmet began to display the casualties of the team. 7 of the 27 mechas that launched the attack had been lost, and the remaining 20 mechas had advanced less than 200 meters. Nearly 200 guns of various calibers on the fortress turrets sprayed flames at the same time, and shells rained down, forming a dense bombing area. The battlefield in front of them was already scorched earth. "Can't stop. Keep moving forward," a girl sounded in the channel, and her excited voice stimulated the 19 people in the field. Yang Mu manipulated the mech to dodge a shell, and saw a camouflage mech not far to the right moving at a fast speed, deftly dodging the attack while constantly fighting back. The name displayed on the mecha avatar was Meng Zhu. If Yang Mu remembered correctly, she seemed to be a girl with a third-level physique. The 19 mechas in the field, driven by the opponent, once again accelerated their forward speed. At the same time, some people began to achieve small results. Occasionally, 1 or 2 missiles hit a small turret on the fortress and overturned it fiercely. Yang Mu turned around, his eyes quickly captured the target, raised his rifle and fiercely blasted a whistling shell in the air. Yang Mu twisted his body again, and the neural docking system quickly fed back Yang Mu's movements, leading the entire War Dragon mecha to move forward rapidly. "Don't hit the turret, focus on the detection radar first," Yang Mu shouted in the channel, then pressed the button on the top of the control stick in his hand with his thumb, and looked up at a place on the fortress. The weapon rack quickly unfolded with the help of the neural system, and the system on the holographic helmet quickly locked the target that Yang Mu saw. Yang Mu controlled the Zhanlong mecha to leap over a deep ravine with a big stride. When the Zhanlong was about to roll, 2 missiles on the weapon rack flew out at this time, and 2 white smoke rose, rushing straight to the target not far away. But this was not enough. It would take several seconds for the missile to hit the target, and the dense array system next to the surveillance radar could completely intercept it. Zhanlong's mecha body did not stop. After rolling on the ground, it knelt on one knee. The rifle in Zhanlong's hand and the 2 machine guns on his shoulders all fired. The flying bullets passed through the barrage and destroyed the dense array system closest to him. Boom! After a missile was swept by the rest of the dense array and exploded in the air, another missile took advantage of this gap to quickly pass through the rain of bullets and directly hit the surveillance radar on the top of a turret before the dense array could react. "Good." Looking at the fire, Yang Mu said fiercely in his heart. After hearing Yang Mu's words, the people in the team also began to turn their targets. The surveillance radar on the fortress was being destroyed rapidly. Second echelon, attack. When Yang Mu fired 2 missiles again to destroy a radar and a turret, the second team of mechas began to move out at the command. The 27 mechas of the second echelon opened fire at full power, emptying all the missiles on the weapon racks. When the first echelon removed many surveillance radar systems, they began to clean up the turrets on the fortress. Looking at the exploded turrets one by one, Yang Mu finally had a bottom line for this operation. He controlled the mecha to avoid the rain of gunfire and bullets. Yang Mu kicked hard on the high concrete wall of the fortress and climbed up quickly. The usefulness of the neural connection system was very obvious at this time. Yang Mu could climb up with the coordination of the mecha's limbs without relying on the propulsion of the engine behind him. After the second echelon joined the battle, The pressure on the remaining 14 mechas of the first echelon suddenly decreased. They controlled the mechas to approach the foot of the fortress, and shouted loudly in the channel one by one. It seemed that they were pouring their hearts on the victory that was about to come. At this moment, a huge explosion suddenly sounded from the old student's side, and black smoke rose to the sky. Yang Mu, who had just stood firm on the bottom floor of the fortress, turned his head and found that the old students had actually taken down the largest artillery turret. The rolling airwaves hit, and the enthusiasm of the freshmen was quickly hit. Long La looked at the old students. Nang Guangzhou, who had the best grades, quickly rushed to the turret of the fortress under the cover of the team and destroyed the largest caliber artillery turret effortlessly. Obviously, the well-trained old students are more able to find the breakthrough point on the battlefield. Long Lai turned his eyes to Su Shaoqing. Su Shaoqing still had that smile on his face, and seemed to be confident. His slender fingers kept moving on the projection screen. Yang Mu and others were shocked by the fruitful results achieved by the other side, but they immediately came back to their senses. The roar sounded again in the channel. The second echelon also rushed forward to the turret within 300 meters in a short time. The third echelon also issued an attack order at this time. Third echelon, advance. The next second, dozens of mechas took off into the air, and dozens of missiles streaked across the sky on this side, whizzing towards the fortress. This was the last wave of clearing, paving the way for the first echelon to reach the top of the fortress and seize the flag. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.